This is the Hagmann and Hagmann report for today. It is Thursday, April 23rd, 2015. We're coming to you live from the Hagmann and Hagmann studios located in the somewhat blustery northeastern United States. You know, we had a little bit of snow out there today. I can't believe it for the time of year. Well, I guess I can. You know, the weather is kind of screwy everywhere. Folks, I'm Doug Hagmann at the helm with fellow investigator, researcher, and most importantly, my son, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, bringing you the news that shapes the headlines, the news that is contorted, twisted, convoluted, and hidden amid a funhouse of smoke and mirrors in the carnival that we call the corporate media. Well, tonight, folks, we're going to be piercing that fog of disinformation and misinformation and misdirection, and we're going to be helping you see what's important, but not what you're not meant to see. For new listeners, folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base on the internet is hagmannandhagmann.com. That's hagmannandhagmann.com. Please bookmark that website. There you can find access to all of our past shows. You can find access to our social networking sites, and most importantly, our original investigative reports. There's some new ones up there, and there are going to be many more new ones coming up here very shortly. Some things that you've heard about, but I promised and I haven't put them up. But finally, I've gotten some things together, and we'll be putting them up here in the next, in the next 24 to 48 hours. Folks, tonight we're going to be talking about a number of things. Our special guest tonight, who's going to be with us for the entire program, is Ted Broer. Now, you've heard him in the past in our program, and Ted Broer is just an unbelievably intelligent man. Everything from your personal health and nutrition to his grasp on world events. So tonight we're going to be getting into such things as Jade Helm. Now, I was talking with a good friend out of Buffalo, New York, WBEN, AM 930 today, Tom Barley, and we were talking about Jade Helm, and he had given me some information today that he got that's quite unsettling, very unsettling. Now, it doesn't have to do necessarily directly with Jade Helm, but I could say this, it's related to it, indeed. So we're going to be talking about that tonight. We're going to be talking about interdimensionalism. This is something that Ted Broer really is going to address. And, boy, even human trafficking that leads to human sacrifice. You've heard of the Bohemian Grove and Skull and Bones and all of this. How much of that is true? Well, believe it or not, our research, and, of course, Ted Broer's research, there's a lot there. And our place in spiritual warfare. So really the whole gambit from a very precise analysis of world events to your personal health. Now, it's interesting because personal health, what a great segue. You've heard me talk about different companies and different people during our show. I'm going to come right out of the gate and tell you, we talk about and are associated with companies and people we trust, companies that deliver a great product. In a few minutes, I'm going to tell you about a company that has become an important part of our lives. In fact, a company whose product has become an intimate part of our lives at the Hagmann household. Now, I want you to listen carefully, because in just a few minutes, I'm going to be telling you about Casper Mattress. Casper.com. That's Casper Mattress at Casper.com. You can go to Hagmannandhagmann.com and click on there's a picture of a mattress, actually a dog laying on a mattress. I want you to go to Hagmannandhagmann.com and click on that link, or go directly to Casper.com/CFP Radio. In keeping with part of the theme of tonight's broadcast, your physical wellness, this just fits right in. Casper Mattress at Casper.com, CFP Radio. So hold on, I'm going to get to that in a minute. And you'll want to listen carefully, because Casper will be giving you $50 off their already low price. But before we get into that, Joe, just very quickly, I don't know if you saw this before we bring Ted on. I don't know whether you saw this or not, but on the The Drudge Report has a lot of interesting headlines. Obama's Orwellian language on drones. Did you see that?
No.
Okay. There's an eerie Orwellian cost to the Obama administration's refusal, or the regime, to use the word war on terror to describe its war on terror. Okay. In his briefing after the White House's admission that 2 hostages, one American, one Italian, were killed in the U.S. operation by drones, Josh Earnest, the press secretary, he struggled to avoid the use war. Okay. Finally, he gave in and stated that under the authorization for use of military force against terrorists, the nation is at war. Okay. But it's interesting to see that the semantics that they're being played out, how the language is being twisted. Another thing I want to direct people's attention to, and this is important as well. You do know, folks, that drone strike had killed Americans and held hostage by Al Qaeda, and Obama, of course, admitted that, although it refused to take any questions. Then, also in the Drudge Report, and I'm mentioning this because these are important issues that I think speak to where we are currently in the long term, in the larger agenda of the takeover of this country and the war on Christians and the war against conservatives, social, moral conservatives. Take a look at the physical appearance of Barack Hussein Obama Barry Soetoro. Drudge makes a thing. Well, I shouldn't say Drudge makes it. He grabs a headline.
Skinny.
Yeah, at the Everglades National Park in Florida. Take a look at him. We're gonna get Ted Broer's assessment on his not just mental health, which is, I think it's important, but his physical appearance. What does that suggest? Is this in line with? Well, what does this suggest? I mean, I think people need to understand that we've got a guy that's running this country as if he's a god, king, pharaoh. Now, some people might say, "Oh, that's a little harsh," but look at the executive orders and such that he's come out with, and some might say
there's new ones under the radar that haven't yet to been really reported on.
Exactly, and folks, in case you haven't seen it on the Hagmann and Hagmann, the HagmannandHagmann.com on our website. In case you have not seen it, what I found interesting is, Joe found this. The new, what would you call it? The new.
That's about the direct energy weapon?
No. This is about the joint FBI and DHS bulletin. The 20 years.
That was from yesterday. And
right.
I know we didn't. I forgot to mention this, but I sent you an email last night or this morning. The Department of the Army and the government have come out with a new direct energy weapons manual. I sent it to the...
Okay. I did see that. And that's something else that we're going to be getting into. There's just so much to get into. But let me get back here, because I know we're going to be talking about our physical health. And folks, let me just tell you right up front here. And I want to make this a part of this program because I think this is so important. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of people trust us for who we associate with, companies we associate with, and there's a level of trust there, and we appreciate that. But folks, those of you who know me, and you can ask my son this, for years I've been suffering from excruciating back pain due to herniated discs, spinal stenosis. I've got arthritis in my spine. I've got bulging discs. I've got osteophytes pressing in on my spine. There was a time when we traveled, Joe, what I do, I'd sit in the chair in the hotel rooms, and rarely would I ever go to bed. Okay.
Yeah. Your sleeping patterns were so screwed up that the longest length of sleep I saw was about 4 hours. But the way in which you would sleep, I mean, you talk about looking at somebody and thinking, wow, they're going to have a neck ache when they wake up. The only thing hanging off the bed is his head, sitting in a chair with his head all the way back or all the way to the side. I mean, this guy fell asleep in ways I couldn't even, wouldn't even want to be found dead in. It was just, it looked so uncomfortable. You could tell the also the quality of sleep was
it
very
was horrible. And
missing.
Yeah, and coming back after a road trip, it was no better because you'd flop on a mattress. So we heard about this new mattress company, Casper Mattress. This goes back to the beginning of February. Now, at that time, I was very interested because this is a revolutionary new mattress. In the beginning of February, we ordered a mattress, and believe it or not, it came by UPS in like 2 days. We had a UPS delivery at the Hagmann household. It was great. It was a box. It was a box maybe the size of, I don't know, like a small apartment refrigerator.
Oh, I remember that.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah.
Carry this up.
Well, I called my neighbor to help him remove our old mattress, and together, him and I removed the old mattress, and he said, "Well, what are you gonna put on? Did you get a new mattress?" I said, "Yeah, it's in the box. It was in the bedroom." And he said, "What?
Yeah.
Really?"
It was a big box, but you would not imagine a mattress.
Right. So anyway, he said, "Look, I got to see this." And together we opened the box, and it was just great. You open the box, and right on top is this nice little, just a really classy little kit. And inside this kit is all the product information. And this looks like a letter opener kind of thing. But my neighbor and I took the mattress out of the box and laid it on the bed. And he said, "Oh, there's no way this thing's going to fit. You must have ordered the wrong size mattress." And I said, No, just watch. So this special little tool, we cut the plastic bag open, and oh my goodness, in about 30 seconds, it just covered the bed. And this was an engineering, a marvel of engineering. Now, he owns an interior design business, and he said, he looked at me and said, "I've heard about these, but you know what, I've never seen one." So he said, "Can I help you set it up?" Well, it was already set up. All right. So it was just really great. And I got to tell you, we got to talking, and he said, I've heard about these. I've never seen it. Now I've seen it, and I can't believe how, it looks like just a fantastic mattress. Well, Casper is an online retail mattress, and they offer these mattresses at a fraction of the price. Now, the mattress industry has really forced people like you and I to pay really high markups. They're revolutionizing the mattress industry by cutting the cost of dealing with resellers. This is fantastic. They provide, two guys got together, and they decided to do things a little bit differently. They cut out the middleman. They created this fantastic, great product. It's a hybrid, actually, kind of a product. It's obsessively engineered at a shockingly fair price. It's got just the right sink, just the right bounce. It's a combination of two technologies, latex foam and memory foam. And they come together for just an exquisite night's sleep. But I'm going to tell you, here's really the other great part about it, because we're on a budget. You can spend over $1,500 for a new mattress. Well, how about this? $500 for a twin size mattress, $500 for a twin size mattress. The $750 for a full size, $850 for a queen, which is what we had. That's not breaking the bank at all. But the best thing about it is this. And they offered us a risk-free trial, 100 days. If you don't like it after 100 days, you can return it. And let me tell you something. It ain't going nowhere. Mattresses made in America. You can't beat the price. You can't get. The reason I brought this all up, and I was not asked to do this. The reason I brought this up is because I really want people to know how much this has helped me, and even my wife, who's got arthritis as well. And folks, right now, if you want to do something really great for yourself, and I mean this, you can do a lot of things, but one of the things I would highly recommend, Casper mattress. It has really, really changed the way we sleep, and I feel so much better. Between the mattress and Ted Broer, I don't know. Seriously, Ted Broer has provided the supplements to us, to me, and I'm like a new guy. And throwing the mattress too, it's like, oh man, watch out, move over. But I think Ted saved my life, and the mattress saved my marriage and back and neck and everything else, and I'm just so happy. So I wanted to get that out of the way. I really wanted to tell people because I was really excited about it, and I just want our listeners to know how excited we are. So sorry I took that time, but I thought I had to share that. And by the way, our studio dog, Lady, 4 paws up. I caught her so many times sneaking naps. I mean, seriously, she at her house, she will walk upstairs and sneak up on the bed, and during the middle of the day and lay in the bed. Not any bed, that bed. So anyway, all right. So there, I'm done. There's my testimony. Ted, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, Doug. I tell you what, there's nothing worse than a bad mattress, and that's a fact. I'm glad you found one that works for you.
Oh man, I got to tell you something. Our old one, you could take a baseball and put it on the side and roll it right in the middle.
That's awful.
Yeah. In fact, my wife and I were talking. We bought it when we first got married 25 years ago. So anyway, Ted Broer, healthmasters.com. Folks, let me tell you something, okay? It seems like I'm not a carnival barker here, but Ted Broer has got the absolute best. Number one, the best book, Breakthrough Health. If you get that book, you just it's your instruction manual for your body. The best supplements. I mean, everything. So. It seems like I'm not a used car salesman. I just believe I'm so excited about life today. I guess I don't know, buddy. But anyway.
Well, you're feeling good.
Yeah.
Energy's up. I mean, it's so funny. I know I talked to you earlier this week, and you told me that you're completely off of metformin now. That you're off of all the drugs. You're maintaining your blood sugar with just using supplements and dietary change. And yesterday, I've got a good friend of mine. His name's Jürgen Klum, and he's a German fella. He came over to the country many years ago. Has a bakery up in Yalaha, Florida. Yalaha is a German bakery. And he called me up and he said, I want you to know I just got my blood test in. He goes, my blood sugar was through the roof, sky high. I started on your program. And he goes, that was a year ago. And he goes, I got my blood test back. I got everything back from the doctor, and they told me that I am no longer pre-diabetic, that I'm completely in normal range and everything. And he goes, and Ted, I want to thank you. I feel great. And see, it's just that easy to do that, Doug. And we did it for you, and I've done it for so many other people. The same thing with the arthritic conditions of so many people. It's because of calcium spurs. And it's so easy to correct a lot of these conditions, but you got to know what to do, and you got to have the right supplements in order to do it. And you got to realize that if you take the stuff from the grocery store that you're buying $3 bottle of vitamins, you get 3 more bottles for free. You get what you pay for. It's probably some kind of chemical extract made out of China. It's probably going to poison you on top of everything else.
That's so true. And of all the things, look, we're facing some pretty heavy-duty stuff coming our way. And you know what, Ted? I just got to say this, that we talk about being prepared with long-term food storage. We talk about being prepared and spiritually and mentally and even physically, but physically it's so important that we get the right nutrients. And I've never... I was always one for pizza for breakfast and French fries and stuff, hamburgers and chicken wings. That's right. But I got to tell you something. Tweak your nutrition, but take the supplements. Yeah, I'm off metformin, and you know what? My blood sugar has never been lower than it is right now through natural means. And again, this is not a sales pitch, folks. This is you better pay attention and listen. I mean, we got to get ourselves together because man, what's coming is going to be.
Right.
We might not have access to the pharmacies, So while we can. I mean, that's realistic,
Well, no, it is, Doug. It is because the thing that people don't understand unless they listen to your show or listen to me before on the other shows, because I'm still co-hosting the Power Hour. Upon occasion, we're down to 2 or 3 times a month on that now on Tuesdays. But what I always tell people is the truth. We had people call me up this past week because I was preempted by another guest for this past week on the Power Hour, and they told me, they called up the office and they said, we want to listen to Ted because every time Ted tells us stuff, we know he's telling us the truth because we don't want to listen to these other guys because a lot of times, we don't really believe what they're saying because we don't even know who they are. And that's what I'm going to tell you tonight. There's all kinds of easy ways to do things, and there's hard ways to do things, but I always look at the easy ways. Tonight we're going to talk about calcium. We're going to talk about magnesium. We're going to talk about arthritic conditions. I've got a whole bunch of health topics to talk about. But the last time I was on with you guys, I promised you I'm going to talk about the 13 dimensions, about time space, about souls, about these human sacrifices they're doing, how they're controlling the reality of this time space around us, what they're doing. I've done extensive research on that for the last month and a half since I've been on with you guys. And I've got some really interesting stuff to cover with you guys tonight that's going to kind of shock a lot of you on how they do it, why they drink the blood, why they do the human sacrifices. I got a lot of answers on a lot of that stuff now. We're going to talk about that tonight because you guys are interested in that. That's going to be, plus I want to talk about what's going on with Jane Hell because, we got one of these Walmarts that they've closed right here within 35 miles of me that's right next to a train track like a mile away. And the other day, Fletcher Barrett, one of my friends, was driving down the interstate highway. He's one of our workout partners, and there were 3 four M1 tanks, Abrams tanks, driving down the highway on their carriers. You know, they were riding on the back of these carriers, I mean, for troop transport and basically military personnel transport, and I guess and for equipment relocation. So, I mean, this is kind of nuts what's going on right now with the Jade Helm exercise. And if anybody who lives in America thinks this is okay, they need to move to the former Soviet Union or East of Germany before it was reunified and think that maybe that's not okay, because there's some serious things coming our way. And you're exactly right. The government is still incessantly trying to take away our rights to buy vitamins. They're still trying to take away the rights to buy supplements because they say vitamins don't work. And the truth of the matter is the studies they do with the vitamins that are synthetic chemical stuff out of China, the garbage vitamins, they're absolutely right. They don't work. And that's why they want to pull them off the market, because they'd rather have you on metformin. They'd rather have you on statin drugs. They'd rather destroy your kidneys, destroy your heart, destroy your liver, destroy your health, destroy everything. I had another friend of mine just the other day. He came over, and he was on our programs like you are. And he was on. They also had him on statin drugs, and he started having kidney problems. One of the side effects of statin drugs is that they destroy kidney function. And he said to me, he said, I'm not sure what to do. You know, I said, well, try this, this, and this. Well, he calls me up like a couple of weeks later. He says, I can't tell you how great I'm feeling. He goes, my blood sugar's normal. Everything's great. He says, I'm doing great. I'm off all these drugs. Well, then it turned out he ended up not staying on the protocol, Doug. He got off the protocol because his wife didn't want him to stay on it. Didn't want him on vitamins. I mean, if you can believe that. And what ended up happening is it's hard to believe, isn't it? I mean, he came over the other day, and he ended up having a kidney transplant, a complete renal failure. His blood sugar still wasn't under control. Went back on my program now, and he came over the other day, and he said to me, he says, Ted, you were right, I was wrong. If I had listened to you to start with, I never would have had to have a kidney transplant. I wouldn't have been in renal failure, and I wouldn't have had to go through this past year of these double surgeries, including a kidney transplant, having another one removed for cancer. He goes, I would not have had any of that stuff happen to me if I had listened to you in the beginning and done what you told me to do and followed your nutrition and your dietary protocol. And you know what the sad part about it is that he knows it's the truth. And now he's having to live with all the stuff that's happened to him, and now he's on all this rejection medicine the rest of his life because of the kidney transplant. So it's sad that sometimes people have to learn the hard way. But then again, I have great testimonials like you and Jurgen, who and hundreds more as far as helping them to get rid of adult onset elevated blood sugar levels without the use of drugs by simply changing their diet and using the nutritional protocol that we add at least. In fact, I still have that on my front page of my website. I've got the Hagmann blood sugar protocol because of all your listeners. And we had one of your listeners call me today. She had a question about the topical magnesium. Her name is Catherine White. Absolutely wonderful lady. She's a sweetheart. Brilliant woman, son's a doctor. And I was talking to her, and I talked to her about 20 minutes. I sent her a free copy of my book, and I signed it for her. And I just want you guys to know, you guys have the absolute best listeners in the world. You guys have, they're the smartest people I've ever talked to on the radio when they call in the office, because they realize when they hear the truth will set them free, and they want to be on a protocol they know that it's going to work. And so it's always fun to be on with you guys. But I want to get started. So let me talk about magnesium for just a second, because last month, when Sharon came on, and she was all geeked up on this magnesium stuff, I'll be honest with you guys, I was still taking my tableted magnesium, but I hadn't really got onto her protocol because she's soaking her feet and all that kind of stuff. And then she came on and gave you that whole testimonial, especially about the spinal stenosis. And our phones blew up, our website blew up. Everybody wanted to be what Sharon was on. And so I thought, you know what? And she's in the gym working out. She's running around on the cardio equipment for forever, man. She's got so much energy. She's bouncing off the gyms like a stinking Super Bowl. And I looked at her and I said, okay, that's it. I've had it. I'm starting on the magnesium stuff now too. I'm starting on the topicals, and I'm starting on soaking my feet. Because soaking your feet when you're a guy, that's kind of a pedicure kind of thing. It's kind of weird, right? And so I thought, well, I'm going to find a way to do this. So every morning I check my emails. So every morning I get up, and now I have my foot bath, and I sit there and check my emails for 20 minutes while I have my feet in this hot water. And I tell you what, my energy's up. My mental acuity's up. I've been doing it about 10 days now. My energy's up. My mental acuity's up. I'm starting to have more energy in the gym. And here's what I found out. This is why, and I started doing more and more research on it, but I knew all of this stuff, but I didn't realize that when you do this topical magnesium, you increase the free testosterone in your blood, both for men and for women. You increase lean muscle mass. You speed up your metabolism. In addition to that, you get much, much stronger in the gym because you have better mitochondrial uptake as far as of the nutrients your body needs, and also of the energy cycles in the body. It does all of the above. Plus, it helps prevent calcium spurs in the body, which is incredible. It enhances bone strength and integrity, increases testosterone level, much, much better exercise and performance. It improves sleep. calms the nervous system, develops stronger muscles, much stronger muscles, improves flexibility, helps to prevent diabetes, supports cardiovascular health because it helps to prevent the hardening of the arteries, which is from too much calcium, and also helps to prevent problems associated with arthritis as far as the calcium building up in those joints like Sharon had with her hands, supports your dental health, and it keeps the motor running because it has involved in over 300 biochemical reactions in the body. And what I learned already in the last 10 or 12 days as I've been using this product is that it's really pretty easy to use. It's just you have to be consistent with it every single day because it's not like taking my B vitamins. When you take them, you get all geeked up in the morning because you feel them like the next day. It takes a little bit of time. I had some pain in my left foot because remember I'm 60 years old. I'm older than you guys, and I'm like I'll be actually 60. I'll be finishing my 60th year in November, and I was starting having some pain in my left foot. I thought, this is ridiculous. What's that from? And that thing's getting better and better and better. And Sharon's bouncing around the yard, running around doing all this work outside now all the time. And I'm like, you need to calm down. She goes, I can't calm down. I got too much energy. So it's kind of exciting because she's 58 years old. I'm 59. I'll complete my 60th year. I'll be 60 in November. And what's interesting about all of this, Doug, is that people say it's a hassle to soak your feet. I'll tell you what. It's not a hassle for me anymore because I'm feeling so good. I'm actually starting to enjoy the foot bath in the morning, and so it's a bit strange. But I wanted to share that with you guys to start with coming out of the gate because a lot of people were calling up and asking how Sharon was doing at the office, and so I wanted to be able to give kind of like a blanket summary on what's happened in the last month and how I'm involved in this. And every morning I get up now, we've got that magnesium oil also. I have Sharon I have her put it on my shoulders, I have her put it on my back, I have her put it on my hips, and then I do the foot bath, and then of course the magnesium deodorant's the best I've ever used. I haven't found another natural deodorant yet that works like this one does. And this one actually works. Most natural deodorants don't work because you have to coat yourself with aluminum chlorohydrate and give yourself Alzheimer's from it. So it's just absolutely crazy. Plus, it also helps to work with the skin, with eczema and dermatitis. There's all kinds of stuff this thing does. So it's pretty exciting because, if you can stop the calcification and spinal stenosis and stop the calcification of the arteries and actually make you feel better, help you better absorb your vitamins, your nutrients, helps your better digestion. It increases it massively increases the immune system. If it can do all of those things by soaking your feet once a day for a few minutes, I think I'm in.
Hey, yeah, exactly. And topically for the oil or for the lotion topically.
Well, I use it. I use all this stuff now. I feel like I don't really care for all that stuff. I don't really do a lot of that, but I am now because I want to get as much absorption as I possibly can. But the most important thing though is to soak those feet. I put the oil and the salt, the magnesium chloride salts into the hot water. Now, what I did yesterday, and I'll let you know how it works next time I'm on with you guys. I ordered one of those little foot baths off Amazon for like $100 or whatever it was that keeps the water to the same temperature the whole time you soak your feet in it. Apparently, it's a big therapy thing to be able to do all of this, and so I'm going to start using that and see how that kind of like supposedly massages your feet and oxygenates your feet. And so I'm getting into this. I haven't done pedicures yet. I have no intentions on doing them, but I tell you what, I feel really good, guys. And if it makes me feel this good in 10 days, and Sharon's still running around like a Super Bowl, I'm in, buddy. I'm just waiting for your wife to get good results on this thing too, Doctor.
Yeah.
Then she'll be able to say something. You can talk about her too, because it's just that amazing. But remember, it doesn't happen the first couple of days you use it. I didn't really notice anything. In fact, about the fourth day, I got a little bit cloudy in the brain, and I started doing some more research. And sometimes it can put you through detox. And the other thing is I'm starting to get all the stuff coming out of the bottom of my feet, which is kind of weird because it's getting in the water and I'm filtering it back out. And I'm kind of like, that's kind of strange. Where's all that coming from? So I've read some stuff on that too. So it's been an interesting experience doing all of this stuff and learning some more stuff even at the age of 60 and having fun with all of this. But we've got a lot of stuff to cover tonight. So I don't know where you guys want to start. We can start with interdimensional stuff now or whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Hold on a second. I just want to tell people this, too, because some people will say, well, what are you talking about this for? We talk about problems. Well, problems, for example, being chemtrails, the aerial spraying, the lack of nutrition of the food and all of this, the poisoning of us. Well, the reason we're telling you this is because this is a fight against it. Do you think the elite, the globalists, do you think that they're, how do you think that they're surviving? I mean, to me, this is important to me because we want everyone to be around and to flourish and to be healthy. And in the process of chemical spraying and the GMO foods and all this other junk that we're subjected to, we got to fight. So let's fight this way, right? I mean, that's kind of why I think it's important. So for those people saying why, what are you talking? Well, we're offering you solutions. All right. So okay,
well,
yeah,
you're always going to have people out there who don't want to be healthy, who don't believe that nutrition plays any type of role as far as your health, who would rather be with the pharmaceutical industry as far as the drugs, who don't believe that all of these different things destroy liver and kidney function. They don't want to believe all that stuff. But why don't you just do this if you don't believe me? The next time you're watching the mainstream news, if you even do that anymore, which you probably don't if you listen to this show because I don't even bother to waste my time with that anymore, listen to the drug commercials on the major shows in the evening as far as the news. Every one of them will come in. It's like that one product, Chantix, which is being used to help non-smokers. It tells people they're going to that one of the side effects is committing suicide and all these other horrible side effects. Quite frankly, if you're going to try to either smoke or kill yourself, I'd rather you just go ahead and keep smoking. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Or just stop doing it without taking a drug that's going to make you want to off yourself. And all of these horrible side effects that are being attributed to all of these diseases because of all the drugs that are being used to treat the diseases. It's absolutely nuts. But if you think that's okay, if you don't have ears to hear or eyes to see with what I'm telling you tonight, then don't listen to me. It's okay too. I'm not going to get mad at you. I'm going to talk to you about transdimensional beings in a few minutes. We're going to talk about demons and entities and all these other crazy things that Paul McGuire talks about. I'm going to tell you now how these things actually did work. I'm going to talk about the Catholic Church, about Druidic worship, how this thing got started with the Nephilim in Genesis chapter 6. We're going all the way back with this stuff tonight because I have tracked it all the way to the current date. And so now we're going to have some fun going through all of this stuff with you guys, and hopefully you'll learn something from this because I sure have in this research that I've been doing for the last few months in this.
Well, let's rock. And you start us off in whatever area that you deem important. Jade Helm,
let's do this stuff
whatever. Go ahead.
Well, let's run through this stuff real quick with the Druidic worship and what's going on with the Druids, who built the old monuments, who built Stonehenge, who did all this stuff, what happened here on this planet that we don't know about. Let's talk about some of that research that I've done. That's what I want to do. Let's take just a few minutes to do this, and then we'll go over to all the other stuff. We'll talk about the Jade Helm. We'll talk about the Walmart by the by the railroad tracks down the road from us, and all the stuff that's going on with these guys, and all of the stuff that we need to talk about anyhow. But let's cover this first because I promised everybody that I was going to do this with you guys one night, and now I've done it. I'm not saying it's a complete work. I'm not even going to tell you it's 100% right because a lot of these Old Testament things and things that go even back beyond that into what's called the pre-Adamic race, this is all speculation on my part and all the other authors' parts, but the only thing we have to prove that something happened are all these old stone monuments like the pyramids and like the Sphinx and all of these other things that supposedly predate even Adam in the Garden of Eden. And, we had a lot of evangelists talking about a pre-Adamic race back in the 70s and the 80s, but they never really got into detail. But we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, too, and what happened here before we got here. And so we have some interesting things to talk about. But what we have to realize first is that the universe right now, as far as we know, as far as most scientists say, but they don't all agree on this either, is about 13 known dimensions. Now, what's interesting about this, let me tell you how the dimensions break down. The entropy or chaos parts of the dimension, the first 5 dimensions. The first 3 are where we live. The 4th is where Einstein talked about time-space. The 5th dimension is the Higgs field of the wormholes. And then we have the second heaven, so to speak, is what the Bible called, the 6th through the 12th dimension. And then 13th dimension, we have the first heaven, or the place to the eternal now, I guess some people call, where God resides. And what's interesting about this is these different studies that have been done talking about these different dimensions are based in physics, and that's what this Hadron Collider is all about. They're trying to disassemble the parts of the universe and try to open these wormholes into time, space, and also into the Higgs field, and also into these other dimensions, which may open up the bottomless pit. We have no idea what they're going to do with these guys, but these guys are all kind of nuts for doing that to start with. But let's start back with the Vatican. Let's start what happened with the Christian Church. Then we'll go back a little bit earlier than that, go all the way back to Genesis chapter 6. But what folks need to understand that the original church was called the Way. It was the Christian church in the beginning. They met in the catacombs. They were there for the first 4 centuries, and the Christian church was actually very much alive and very much doing what God wanted us to do as far as the work of Christ. In the 4th century, Constantine came in. He brought in the institutional church of Rome, and he made Christianity the Roman religion. But he also brought in the Roman pagan festivals. the fertility feast, the feasts that were from the Greek and Egyptian gods. The Easter feast is a version of that with the Isis fertility feast. December 25th was the day of the rebirth of Osiris, some people say, and this is from the underworld, and this is when they decided to go ahead and celebrate Christmas. All Saints' Day, a lot of folks say, are the Feast of the Dead. And then we have the Asherah pole feasts. Asherah, this is interesting because in the Old Testament, I think it's mentioned 40 or 50 times that God says not to erect Asherah poles. Now, Asherah poles went right along with Baal sacrifice, and what this was, this druidic practice that actually came from the Nephilim from Genesis chapter 6 that you talk about in the book of Enoch. They were taught to do all of these different types of satanic witchcraft worship services. And what they would do is they would have this big feast, and they would all have a big orgy. And 9 months later, when the babies were born from this orgy, they would sacrifice their children to Baal. And that's why God kept telling them to take down the Asherah poles, to stop sacrificing their children to Baal. This went on to go in with the and then what happens, and this goes on from the Druidic practice, this is where gingerbread came from, gingerbread men. Because if they didn't have any kids, they would actually put these effigies into the oven and bake them, and as if they were burning them to Baal. People don't know that, but that's where that came from. The Knights of Columbus, this is all part of the Catholic Church, the same as the Knights of Malta. It all ties together with the Masonic lodges. The Masons are basically a reincarnation of Druidic priesthood in the worship of the woods, which goes back to the Wicker Men, in which they would take a Celtic child and they weave them into a basket and they would burn them. It also goes back to the Bohemian Grove, what's going on out there when they're worshiping with Moloch and they're burning a human being in effigy. This stuff goes all the way back to Genesis chapter 6, when these fallen angels taught this to men. Now, what happened is God didn't want us doing all of this stuff, and this type of stuff has permeated our culture all the way up to the current day, and I'll continue with this timeline. Even St. Patrick, the saint of Ireland, he drove out the Druidic priest, the snake priest, and basically re-Christianized England because it had become completely caught up in Druidic worship. The Talmudism, the Buddhism, the communism, the Mason researcher, the Mason cult, these are all roots in ancient paganism and Druidism. This started all the way back, as I mentioned earlier, all the way back to Genesis chapter 6 with the Nephilim, the book of Enoch, when the 200 fallen angels came down on Mount Hermon in Lebanon, and they erected their ancient temples there, and they taught the spells and the witchcraft to the people. They basically, what they did, it was against God's will, they revealed the secrets of the natural universe prematurely to humans without humans needing to know that, because they were following Lucifer's decree and not God's decree. Because we got to remember, this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. There's actually, guys may not know this, but there's something called the dark satellite, which is in a polar orbit over Earth. It's about 22,000 miles up, and they're saying it's anywhere from 13 to 35,000 years old. And so this has been in orbit around our planet, and it's not a naturally occurring satellite. It is man-made, and it's been up there for years and years and years, probably from a pre-Adamic civilization that has been on the planet. If you go back all the way to Saudi Arabia and Yemen, there's a thing called obsidian green glass, which is made from volcanic glass, but there's also trinidite, which is nuclear glass, which is also green. And a lot of people believe that there was some type of nuclear war, something happened with Atlantis, something happened in this pre-Adamic culture in which a lot of this glass was formed in Saudi Arabia and over in Yemen. Now, a lot of people believe that the obsidian green glass that's being classified as that is actually the trinidite from another Holocaust that took place eons of time ago in this pre-Adamic race. Now, I don't know where the pre-Adamic race came from. I'm not even going to try to speculate. I have no idea, but what I do know is they were hybridized, and they had a lot of animal and humans that were mixed together. The pyramids are supposedly 3,000 years old. Some people say the Sphinx is as old as 16,000 years old. I've been in the pyramids. I've crawled down in the Great Pyramid in Giza. I've gone down in it. There's a shaft that goes down into the King's Chamber. I was in it. I walked down to the bottom of it. I could not believe the architecture on the inside and how the stones underneath fit together so tightly you couldn't insert a razor blade. And these were huge, huge stones. And how they built these things. Well, they were using anti-gravity technology. They were using harmonic gravitonics. They were using all kinds of engineering marvels that created this tolerance that's unheard of even today. Then we also have the labyrinth, which is north of there, which has been written about by many of the scholars and the ancient scholars. It was a 1,500-room labyrinth underground. It was north of the pyramids, in the underground cave system and the tunnels they had built. And this is basically north of the Valley of the Kings, up there north of Giza. And so we have, and it was supposed to have been filled with all these different scripts in the ancient knowledge of Egypt in the pre-Adamic culture. And what happened is this, from the research that I've read, now guys, now listen to me, this is speculation. Don't say Ted's gone off the deep end here, because this is what I've been reading for the last couple of months, trying to figure out how this thing tied together with the pre-Adamic race and where these ancient things came from, like Stonehenge. And now they're saying that basically Lucifer has had something to do with messing up the pre-Adamic race. That whole thing was apparently wiped out. God came back in and he created Adam and Eve, and then they were created in God's image. Eve came from Adam, and they were just supposedly, in some of the research that I've read, extremely large human beings, probably some type of giants. And in fact, you could look at the sacrificial stones that were discovered a few years ago in Turkey, which they're saying from the Garden of Eden, and they're saying that might have been from Adam and Eve, and by their accounts, these guys could have been 16, 17, 18 feet tall. Who knows? I have no idea. But remember something, guys. When Satan was created, he was pretty much top dog in the cosmos under God. He helped to put everything together. People don't understand who he was. And when Adam and Eve were created, they were still young. They were still children when they were deceived. I don't believe I really don't believe at all that Satan could have ever deceived Adam and or Eve had they been matured in the Lord and known the things that they should and shouldn't do. Because remember, they were created as adults. They weren't created as children. And so people need to understand that. And so they didn't have the maturity level to allow Lucifer to come in, because he's pretty bright, and come in and deceive them. That's what happened in the garden. Now let's keep going past that point. Now, here's what happens now with going on with the Catholic Church. In the World Council of Churches, which is run by the Catholics, the gospel's not being taught. The good news about God and about Jesus Christ, the good news is not there. And what happened is these ancient human beings that came all the way back from Genesis chapter 6, who were here with the Nephilim, they were taught all of this stuff, which carried right into Egypt and Osiris and all the stuff that Tom Horns talked about so much, and Steve Quayle's talked about so much. Right. I won't go into redundancy on that. And what's happened is these guys then, they mutated. You had these Hebrews who became good Jews, good Jewish folks. There's still a lot of them today. And then you had a group of them that mutated when they were sent into captivity into Babylon, and they went into Talmudism, which is a form of Druidism, and it's Kabbalic knowledge. And what that is that sound and letter knowledge. It tells them how the universe gets put together and takes apart. A lot of these guys became the wizards in the courts of Europe. They were like the ones who did all of these magic rituals and stuff. They were actually Talmudic, Druidic wizards. They did blood pagan ceremonies throughout Europe, and they were actually driven out. They didn't want them there because they were killing people. And these are the Satanists that started coming in all the way through all of this. They were doing evil things, and to them we were simply soulless dogs, and it was okay to defraud us or to kill us or whatever. It got so bad that in 1215, we had the Magna Carta, which is rights of the people to not be treated like they were just animals. And so this goes on now. Remember, this goes back to Lucifer, who's doing all of this stuff with Sabbatain. Now, we talked about that in detail, what's happened with Sabbatain and these other Satanists in the 1600s. That was Sabbatai Zevi, Sabbatai Zevi, Zevi. He claimed that he was the Jewish Messiah. Then he died, became a Muslim, believe it or not, and then another guy named Jacob Frank came in. And he said he was the actual person who was going to be the savior. He ended up contacting Moses Bauer, who then changed his name to Rothschild, and now they own half the balance of the wealth of the world. And what they did, they were taught the power of money magic, as far as the fractional reserve banking. They did all this through the New World Order, through Lucifer. They ended up, remember, the Masonic, the Catholic, these Satanists, they're all tied to the Druidic faith. That's very important. You have to understand what happened, because the Catholic Church used to be very, very Druidic, even more so than it is now. And what ended up happening is, purgatory is a pagan concept for Valhalla, which is like for the Vikings. And what ended up happening is you had the reformists come in. They tried to change it, like Luther, and said, you can't do all of this. You can't allow all this Druidic worship to be in there. So now today, to bring it forward to Obama and all these other people that are here, these are kind of like the Druidic classes of today. They're the chosen ones. I guess you could call them part of the wizard families. A lot of them have had this is coming from Drush Dizdar now, because he's put together a lot of the pieces for me. he went into the sex magic rituals, what they do, how they shatter the human consciousness, how they alter and create sub-personalities, how these people like the Clintons and the Bushes are controlled through satanic worship, Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones. They've developed what's called associated identity disorder, and most of these people who are leading the world today are under the control of these demon spirits, or we also know them as trans-dimensional entities. So that's what's happening to that point. You guys have any questions to ask me, because I want to keep going with this for just a second before we start on the human worship.
Yeah. No, I just want to point out to our listeners, if folks, if you listen to the show from last Monday, Steve Quayle and Pastor David Langford talks about the Ishmael, Isaac, Abraham, that tree, the tree and the grafting, and really the origins. For example, Pastor Langford had said. Talked about where the Muslims really had originated genetically, and of course, and I'm slaughtering this, but you get the idea where that came from Ishmael, and of course he was saying about how there's a difference here between the Jews and of course the Muslims. We know that, and the Jews, Muslims, and Christians, and he talked about Benjamin Netanyahu in terms of the God he worships versus the God being worshipped by Barack Obama. Now, I mean, without getting into the nitty-gritty of this, just listen to Monday's program. You'll understand, and then compare it to what Ted is saying today. Okay, I just want to just kind of give you that little bit of a push there. But go ahead. No, continue.
And this is why I started all this off by saying, because I'm not going to let you guys put me in that pigeonhole like that. Not you guys, but people who are listening. This is not about being anti-Semitic. There's a lot of really good Jews out there that still practice and they still worship the Torah. Okay, these are not the folks that I'm talking about. I'm talking about Kabbalists, and on top of that, you don't have to be a Jew to be a Kabbalist. That's not even true. And you don't have to be these are Satanists, is what they are. And because it was years ago, I did a show. This is crazy, but this is. I always tell you guys. I always tell the truth. This is what the truth is so much easier to deal with. Except sometimes it gets really weird. I did a show up in New York City, and it was called the God Squad. I don't know if you ever heard of that or not.
No.
And it was no. This is true. This is true. And I went up there. I flew to New York, and I did this show. It was a TV show, and the two hosts of the show, one of them was a Jewish rabbi, and the other one was a Catholic priest. And they brought all these people in to interview them, and they actually had pretty good numbers because they were trying to bring together and let people realize that there were a lot of commonality in the Jewish religion and in the Christianity religion. And what they didn't know is that I knew a lot about this stuff. So I started asking these questions on the air, and they were answering me all these questions. It was really I thought it was a really good show. I think they had me on for 2 episodes, and I think it's off the air now. I think the Catholic priest has passed on, so the show wasn't continued. But the Jewish scholar, the Jewish rabbi that I talked to, he was one of the most brilliant men I've ever met. And I was talking to him, and I started asking him, I said, well, what about this Talmud thing, this Babylonian Talmud? Because he goes, I don't believe in all that. I said, what do you mean you don't believe in it? He goes, I don't believe in all that. He goes, I believe in the Torah. And he goes, there's a group of Jewish folks out there that believe in that, and they're not only Jewish, there's a lot of other people who believe in that. He goes, that's not of the Old Testament. He goes, I don't believe any of that. And I said, what about heaven and hell? Because the Talmud basically teaches that's not real. And he goes, no, that's heaven and hell. He goes, of course I believe in that. He goes, where do you think you Christians got that concept? That's from us. And so the guy was absolutely brilliant. So what I'm trying to say is this, because a lot of folks are confused about that, because Henry McCall came on the show with me a few months ago, and I was blessed enough and privileged enough to host your show, and he was talking about this because he's a Jewish fellow who's no longer a practicing Jew. He was a Talmudic Jew, and he tried to tell everybody what the difference was. But we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If it wasn't for Judaism, there would be no Christianity. Jesus was Jewish. We have to understand that, and we have to understand that we can't just criticize all of that, because it's not all of them that's doing this crazy stuff. It's the Satanist group that's doing it, and that's what I told Tex Mars when I had him on the show in the Power Hour. I said, we can't just say that all these guys are bad, because they're not. So let's go ahead. Let's go back to the 6th and 12th dimension now, in the second heaven. This is going to be interesting now. When a human being is sacrificed, okay, most of the time they're awake when this is happening, okay, according to stuff that I've read, which I don't I don't like to read a lot of that stuff because it's too weird to me, okay? And what happens is they release what's called a catecholamine. These are adrenaline, such as epinephrine and dopamine. And this is what happens is, these are fear molecules is what they are in cellular biology and in DNA. The plasma physics is in the blood, and the blood is infused with these catecholamines. The frequency of life and the epigenetics are in the blood. When these people consume the harmonic frequency of the person through human sacrifice or through bleeding that person out when that person is terrified, they literally get high on these catecholamines. They actually have a physical high from it. Supposedly it's very, very addictive. And then what ends up happening is, remember Al Gore used to run around with a vial of blood around his neck. Remember all that crazy stuff? And the sad part about this, oh, you didn't hear about all that? You can Google. I'll Google that for you and read you about that in a minute. Yeah, but what happens is this is the soul energy that's being released. Now, when these people aren't saved, when the soul is destroyed, they actually absorb the energy from the soul. And what's interesting about all of this, these Sabbateans, these Satanists who killed the Russian family through the Bolsheviks, they know that when they do these human sacrifices, everybody listen to me for a second, it's going to get really weird. These astral sacrifice, this is in the second heaven, the 6th to the 12th dimension, they create tremendous amounts of energy in the astral plane in the 6th and 12th dimension, these higher spiritual planes through the human sacrifice. And when you kill these innocents like they do, they create power to transform the reality of the hologram that we live in. Through their Kabbalic magic is what they do. The hologram is projected from the higher dimensions or the second heaven. Satan wants to create a new world order out of chaos. God wants to create a spiritual order through his Holy Spirit for us to be with him for all of eternity. Now, this projector from the hologram that we're in is from the second heaven, from the 6th through the 12th dimension. Some say the dark matter. And we are fallen by sin, but God wants us to return to him through Christ, through the Holy Spirit. Satan doesn't want this. He wants order out of chaos or a new world order for him to rule over by his boot, like he's doing right now in the United States, just killing people with drones, et cetera, et cetera. God wants us to rule and reign with him in heaven from all of eternity through Christ and through the Holy Spirit. What this is literally a battle for the hearts and the souls of men being fought in the heavenlies. The Hadron Collider, again, is opening up stargates in other dimensions, opening the bottomless pit of hyperspace, which they're trying to do to open up these portals to bring this other stuff over to this dimension and to disassociate the materials of this planet from what made these materials in this planet, creating all of these different types of mini little wormholes. Dark matter that we have now known in physics, that we finally realize is there, is literally the matter that's created from the attention field that is created through physical reality, the projector, so to speak. Now listen to me for a second. We are the co-creators of the reality that we live in. This is what God gave us the ability to do. We have the power of life and death is in the tongue, the words that we speak. Okay, you have to decide for yourself what you're going to speak and what you're going to bring about. That's why when they were talking to me the other day on the Power Hour, I told Joyce, I said, I really don't want to start talking about a lot of this really negative news because I don't think all of it's true, and I think it's trying to create a negative energy field for us to try to change the physical reality that we live in to a negative state. And we'll talk more about that in just a second on positive confessions that you can do. Now, remember, trust is remembering the prior relationship that you always have with God. You must have a prayer life. I've talked about this on the show many, many times. We teach the children how to pray. We teach our kids how to pray every morning. We have a prayer time with them, an out-loud prayer time. You've got to consult with God. You've got to ask his approval. Now, you can't ask his, you don't have to worry about asking his approval for things that are already guaranteed to you in the Word, such as prosperity and health, etc. You don't have to ask for that. You can just speak that because, remember, the attention field is created in hyperspace. That is what these guys are controlling. This is what they didn't want us to know when they start doing all of this stuff to us and controlling us through all these rituals that they do on an ongoing basis. Remember, the sons of God have been saved and God wants us to have lordship with him when we go into the next realm with him. Remember, Moses was able to strike the water came out. The faith healer Peter in the New Testament, he said to the guy who was the cripple, who said, silver and gold have I not, but what I have I give unto thee. See, this astral sacrifice and these split personalities, they control and trap the soul to do evil, to traffic in souls, which is what the Bible says happens in the later times. This changes the reality on earth because it changes this conscious field that we all live in. That's what we have to understand. The negative energy field over us is war, fear, greed, hatred, pornography. All of this stuff does this to us. They look at us, Doug, like we're cattle to be use to create a negative energy to bring on their reality of Lucifer. They kind of like were cattle to create the milk of the time of reality for the future. And this is why when non-believers are sacrificed, the soul energy is released and is destroyed during the sacrifice. That's what folks don't get this. And this soul energy, they get high on this and from the catecholamines and the adrenal molecules. And we're here to do God's will, and we're here as the Christians. That's why every tongue shall bow, every knee shall bow, and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. Because we have power and authority over these creatures, and that's why it even says, if you look in online, that when you call on the name of Jesus in the event of a quote alien abduction, whatever you want to classify that thing as, they put you back in your house, put you back in the room that you were in, and they stop what they're doing because they know in that next dimension of these aliens or whatever they are, that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. They know who He is and know the power that He has. In fact, that's evident too in the New Testament. When they were driving out demons using Jesus' name, and the one guy starts to try to drive out a demon in Jesus' name, they said, Jesus we know, Paul we know, Peter we know, we don't know who you are, and they beat him up. And so that's what people need to realize, is that we have authority when we're Christians, when we're tied to that 13th dimension with God through our pineal gland, through our cord of silver water, living water, through our silver cord to God, and only we can destroy it if we have that relationship with God. But frankly, I believe that if we have that relationship, why would you possibly want to destroy it? So there you go, Doug. I told you I'd try to get through that as quickly as you can. At least this thing's going to be on a podcast. You can listen to it more slowly. And again, I'm not guaranteeing the accuracy of anything I just said, but this is what I've learned from the research that I found, and this is about the only way any of this makes any sense. So there.
Well, yeah. I think what you've done is you've created this amalgamation of Russ Dizdar, of Paul McGuire, Dr. Lake, Josh Peck, some other people, and kind of combine this together. And I think it's important to understand, and we got to slow this down a little bit, the 33 and the third, in terms of the background, because some people are saying, well, it's 33 and the third, what's that? Yeah, but the importance here is understanding what they believe, that is the Satanists, and why they do what they do. This is not New Age talk. I mean, so get that out of your head. This is
no, it's not. This no.
Yeah, I mean, what we've got here is what you just said here, and very rapidly, is the architecture.
I've got my notes. I can go back over all of it slowly if you want.
Well, no, that's fine. But I mean, you just laid out the spiritual architecture here, and I think it's very important for people to understand too that all you remember is this as well. Regardless, and I believe that you're correct in your assessment. But even if I mean, we talk about all of this other stuff. This regardless of what it is, it doesn't matter what we as Christians believe. As much as it matters it does matter what we believe, of course, being Christians, but in terms of the magic, that dark magic, that's evil right. Magic, the spell, it matters what they believe. And that belief is the driver of action, so we have to understand their playbook, their motivation to understand what's going on in the world today at a higher level than just the holographic images that we see around us, and I get that. So, I mean, this is graduate school stuff, and to me,
so
anyway.
This is PhD Christianity. That's what this is.
Yeah, exactly, and that's very good. I mean, and you did very well. And I think it's important to understand too that you've got people like Obama who carry around a talisman, a talisman in his pocket, and of course I didn't, for whatever reason, I don't know if I just never heard of Al Gore carrying around blood, a vial of blood. What was that about? Anyway.
Well, no, I just looked it up. I've got it's all over the internet. If you guys want to read about it, I knew I was right. This is Did you Google it?
No, I didn't. I didn't. But I guess the point is obviously these people are not. You can't be a Christian and be doing that at all, right? I mean,
no. But see, remember they get these chemicals in there from the fear. and they get addicted to it, and they want to do this. And I mean, these are some interesting things. There's all kinds. If you Google Al Gore, a vial of blood in a suitcase, and it just said apparently. I'll read you a little article real quick. This is what it says. It said apparently, according to Fritz Springmeier and Bill Schoenbeilen, Al Gore was caught transporting vials of blood in a suitcase. From what I understand, this was the major news story back in the 90s and was quickly swept under the rug by the mainstream media when they claimed there's nothing more to it, that he was a hemophiliac. Okay, so, but the point is, I mean, I don't know any other hemophiliacs that carry around vials of blood and blood with them. I mean, I think the whole thing's weird, you know. But, I mean, he may just be a hemophiliac, you know. He may be one of those things that, you know, that's why he was doing that. But I just think the whole thing's weird, especially when you start looking into the adrenaline aspects of the blood, the high they get from the blood, and all this addictive stuff, and how these guys are always doing this. Because I was watching a video just the other day on Stanley Kubrick on his life, and how he had exposed this entire blood-drinking group of people in his movie Eyes Wide Shut, which I don't recommend you watch unless you're watching it on TV, so all the filthy parts and the nudity will be edited out of it. That would have been an X-rated movie had they not blocked out the end with that massive orgy at the end. But see, this is what the elites do. Kubrick knew this. He was an insider. And remember, when he gave that movie for the final cut to be released, he told them they couldn't do any editing to it, and they ended up editing it, and they ended up removing about 15 minutes of it, according to some of the research that I've seen. And what ended up happening is they took out the final parts about the energy and all the different things, I guess, in the astral projection plane and all the other stuff that they do. So that's what Kubrick knew. He knew all of that. He knew what was going on. He understood all of that. So it's an interesting thing when you start looking at what he did and what he knew, you know, with that whole thing with 2001: A Space Odyssey, you know, all of the stuff with you know, with the one with Jack Nicholson, with that when he was in that house, that crazy house thing that he did, and plus also the one that he did with the Clockwork Orange. I mean, and that was all about the mind control program. This guy was a Hollywood insider. He knew what was going on, and he was always trying to leave us cues as far as what people were doing and how they were being programmed. And so I find Kubrick's information fascinating, and I really wish he would have lived a little bit longer, but I guess they decided. But of course, he was pretty old by the time he did Eyes Wide Shut. So the whole thing's very, very strange. I've watched that movie on TV before when it was edited. That's some weird stuff, Doug. That's a weird TV show, man. That was weird.
Yeah, and Paul McGuire gets into that in Mass Awakening, a touch, and also A Prophecy of the Future of America. You know, it's amazing what we see out of Hollywood, and John is going to be coming on at some point to talk about his personal observations about the Hollywood cult, and there's so much there. Of course, Hollywood. You know, what is that? Holly, the wood of witches' wands, Hollywood, and there you have it. And you know,
remember,
so there's just
remember these Druidic wizards and warlocks. I spoke to another gentleman friend of mine who was wanting to go to New York City, brilliant man, to learn ancient Hebrew, and he went to one of the synagogues there, and they told him, and I've mentioned this before on the show with you before, he said, I want to learn ancient Hebrew, and they said, what you want to learn is not what we teach you. We're not going to teach you. You're a Christian. We're more like Harry Potter, if you want to use an analogy, as far as wizards and warlocks and demons and what we conjure up. So that's what's going on with a lot of these different folks in the United States. And this is what they do. This is why they sacrifice these human beings, because they take it up on that astral level, that second heaven, that 6th through the 12th dimension, and they control the projection of the hologram by the words that we speak, by what they show us on TV, by the negative energy they create. And David Icke goes into detail in this in his books. Though I don't agree with his anti-Christian stance, I think that's ridiculous because he throws the baby out with the bathwater. But what we have to do is we have to go back to what the Word of God says, and we have to realize that His Word is the same yesterday, today, and forever, even if the Catholic Church wanted to try to mess it up and throw all that Druidic worship practices. But that goes back to Stonehenge. That goes back to these ancient monuments. It goes back to the pre-Adamic race. It goes back to all of that. And so what's interesting about all of this is that God so loved us, that He chose us, that He sent Jesus for us, that he wanted us to be made one with Him, that He wanted us to be reconciled with Him through Christ Jesus, that He gave us the ability to connect with Him in the 13th dimension through our pineal gland, through the silver cord, that He gave us the power to tread on serpents and all the things that the Bible says. He gave us the power to create our own holographic reality by the words that we speak. That's why He told us the power of life and death is in the tongue. The problem is the Christian churches don't preach this. Otherwise, we could change this planet. We could do everything. If the Christian Christians stop watching the stinking negative news every night because of what the news is they're putting out, those news channels would go out of business, and Christians could watch good, clean, wholesome entertainment. The problem is, so many of the Christians are hooked on pornography now, and they don't understand who they are in Christ. Last week I had a kid come in the gym with us working out here at the house. I've got a gym here we work out in, and what's interesting is he was talking about his kid. He had just had a little 2-month-old baby, 2-week-old baby, 3-week-old baby, and he told me, he goes, he had told me that he wasn't going to immunize this little girl. And I said, well, that's great. I said, you can always make that decision later on when she gets ready to go to school, but I don't agree with a lot of the immunizations. In fact, I don't agree with any of the immunizations they're giving out. So we'll go ahead. Thank you so much. And I gave him a whole bunch of information on that, a whole bunch of books and stuff to read on it. I come into the gym last Monday night. He says to me, he goes, I asked him, I said, it's still not immunizing, right? He goes, no, we decided to immunize. And I said, why are you going to immunize? He goes, well, here's what I believe. If I give my child the 67 immunizations that she's required to have, and she comes down with autism because of the immunizations, then it was God's will for my daughter to have autism.
Uh-huh. Wow. Yeah.
And and forgive me, folks, if you're listening to me right now, because you're not going to believe this. I said a bad word, and when he said that, and I said a bad word, and I know I shouldn't do that. But sometimes, if sometimes that because to me that's blaspheming the Holy Spirit, because the truth of the matter is you're attributing the works of the devil to God, and you can't do that. You just can't do that. You can't say that something was caused by God, that Satan did, because the devil comes to rob, kill, steal, and destroy. God comes to give us life. And that's called the providentialism, is what that's called. And when you believe in the providentialism of God, in other words, everything that happens is God's will to have happen. That's not what God does. God doesn't. That's not what the Bible says we're supposed to do. That's like stepping off a 10-story building and say, if I die now from the law of gravity, that's God's will. Stepping in from a semi-truck, that's God's will. Smoking 10 packs of cigarettes a day and wondering why you have heart disease at the age of 40, that's not God's will. That's providentialism. You can't do that because it gives Christians particularly an excuse to do whatever they want to do, not stand for the Word of God, not stand for what they know they're supposed to do, and then blame everything back on God. It doesn't work that way, Doug and Joe. It simply isn't accurate. It's not true, and we can't believe stuff like that. We're put in a hologram here in this bottom 3 dimensions that we're in, then we're given the ability to control the very fabric of time-space by the words that we speak, the power of because he's given us the power of life and death in the tongue. He's told us what to do. He's given us all the clues. He's told us what to do. He even told them in the Old Testament, he goes, now I'm laying life before you, and I'm also laying death before you. Now I'm telling you what, you need to choose life. I mean, he tells them to choose life. And see, that's the truth. If we learn that we can choose life over death, we can take our cinnamon extract, we can do the things that we do, we can stabilize our blood sugar, we can choose life, not death. I mean, we have to understand that. See, I believe that everybody who's listening to me tonight is listening to me because God wants them listening. I believe that, okay? If you want to call that providentialism to that degree, okay. But if they turn off the radio or turn off, you know what I'm saying? But the point is, you can't blame everything bad that happens on God. It's simply not true.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you made that pretty clear. Very good. Very good.
With that, we're up against the top of the hour break. We're going to take that now. So grab a glass of water, sit back, and we'll be back after a quick word from the commercials. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann Hagmann Report on this Thursday, April 23rd, 2015. Our guest, Mr. Ted Breuer, Dr. Ted Breuer, his website, healthmasters.com. Body by Ted. You can go there from hagmanandhagmann.com or just go to healthmasters.com, bookmark his site. He has some of the great, ladies and gentlemen, hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this Thursday, April 23rd, 2015. Dr. Ted Breuer is our guest. His website, healthmasters.com, also Body by Ted. He is a distinguished doctor, a great speaker, and our personal health guide here at the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. He is such a generous and nice man with his time, and with his information, he has put together special packs and sections on his website specifically for Hagmann and Hagmann listeners, as many people have lots of questions and are looking to move away from traditional medicine and more into the natural medicine and vitamins. You know, we too often find ourselves fighting diseases after it's too late, after we've already contracted them or have not taken care of ourselves too well to the point where our body has formed these diseases, but we can take preemptive steps, and Ted is the man to talk to in this regard.
Yeah, and he's very, very well versed in all the other world events as well. And Ted, this hour, where do you
need some supplements or Bible study or?
Yeah, well, where do you want to start this hour, Ted? We got so much to cover.
Well, I want to do some more on nutrition, but there's one other thing I want to talk to you about real quick. It's called adrenochrome, and what the adrenochrome. Remember, I talked about a minute ago about the catecholamines. Adrenochrome is the byproduct of the oxidation of adrenaline, and this is what gives the blood drinkers, the Satan worshipers, their high. It's like a drug to them, and it's a psychoactive property, and it's like a mind control drug. It gives you literally an adrenaline high, and so you can look up those words if you want tonight. You can go catecholamine, which I'll spell it for everybody: CATECHOLAMINES. Also adrenochrome, ADRENOCHROME, which produces euphoria. And so those are the ones that I want you to look up, and you can look a lot of the other stuff up too. But those are the ones that I wanted to share with you guys as far as why they're drinking the blood, and why when you watch these rituals, even with Stanley Kubrick, and they're doing these crazy things, they start going into these crazy, gyrating raves and stuff like that because of the adrenochrome and the other types of epinephrine compounds they're putting in their body. I've also got something I'm going to post on the website tomorrow. Sharon wrote this, and I helped her with it a little bit. And what it is we teach the kids positive confessions. They're also called affirmations that you can use in your prayer time, and they're all scripturally based. And I'm going to go ahead and post this. Sharon did a great job writing these. And this is what I want people to understand is that, you need to be confessing the right stuff. You need to be speaking the right stuff in your prayer time. You need to be getting your children to speak the right stuff. Because if they tell the things that are not as if they were, that are positive, they can change the fabric of reality, they can do that. Plus, remember, you've got to believe in your heart with faith that what you're speaking is true. And what's interesting about this to me, Doug and Joe, is I read a book a long, long time ago that I do not recommend because it's got some other stuff in it that's no good. And it was called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah, I read
what was interesting about this, you guys know, he's got a whole thing in there on spirit guides that you guys don't need to be involved in, so I don't recommend the book. But what I did is I didn't know all that when someone recommended it to me back in the early 80s. And he talks about the power of affirmation and visualization. And basically what visualization is believing what you're going to have before you get it and seeing it in your mind's eye, which I believe, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. I just believe we can't get all caught up in the Satanism whole realm of that whole thing and what they do as far as their astral projection stuff that they do when they do the sacrificial stuff, because that's not of God. But when you believe that you have, let me read you a couple of these affirmations real quick that Sharon wrote. I have so much to be thankful for. God is doing great and mighty things in and through my life. I am blessed so I can be a blessing. I enjoy seeing others being blessed. I commit my plans unto the Lord, and they shall succeed. That's right out of Proverbs. I'm a child of the Most High God. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. God gives me wisdom daily to make wise choices. It's kind of like the book of Proverbs in a lot of these. God made me special with amazing talents. And there's like 4 pages of these. I'm going to post them on my website tomorrow so you can get them for free and download them. And so you can see them, and it talks about savings, it talks about earning, it talks about reputation, it talks about serving God, it talks about leadership, about what friends to choose, what kind of family to have. And what I want people to realize is this: you've got to teach your children the right affirmations. You've got to teach them how to speak the right things. If you want to change the fabric of space-time, the very reality in which you live in, you can do that, but you've got to learn first that you've got to have a proper prayer life, and you've got to believe the things that you're speaking, and that's so very, very important. But anything you guys want to add to any of that stuff, Joe or Doug? Because I'm fixing to jump back on the nutrition bandwagon right now.
No, go ahead.
Okay, what's interesting here, before, there's a couple news stories I want to cover. If you guys haven't noticed, we've been having a boatload of volcanic eruptions all over the planet. I mean, it's ridiculous. The Calbuero volcano erupts in Chile after 42 years of silence. The Nevado de Ruiz volcano shaken by an earthquake, swarms and ash commissions. The new eruption in Turibala produces an ash column reaching 6,500 feet. This is kind of interesting. It's very strange. If you read the Extinction Protocol, that's a website you can go to that talks about all these different eruptions every single time, and I find that very fascinating. Also, a couple of quick news stories before we jump on the nutrition stuff. look at what's going on with Obama. Why is Obama so silent about the vicious persecution of Christians all over the globe? And what's happening is Christians are being persecuted everywhere. And so what you have to realize is the reason they're being persecuted is that he's not a Christian. Okay, he's like being avatared by some demon or whatever, right? And so he wants to destroy Christianity to the best of his ability. That's what George Bush Jr. did. That's what Clinton did. Remember when George Bush Jr., Doug, remember when he had the ability in the very beginning to stop pornography on the Internet and he didn't do it? You know, we had 9/11 hit, and he suddenly shifted his efforts to something else. You know, Vladimir Putin last week, or maybe I think it was this week, signed a law that he's going to start banning pornography in Russia. Now think about that. You know, that's pretty interesting to me. I mean, everybody's, you know, bad-mouthing Vladimir Putin or not, whether or not he's a body double, he's the real Vladimir Putin left. We don't really know who in the world this guy is. But the point is, he sure seems to be doing a lot of stuff right that we don't do anymore in the United States as far as that. And remember, pornography is a major, major problem. We've got a lot of Christians, a lot of women, a lot of guys, a lot of children. I mean, we're giving kids cell phones and iPhones, and they're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old when they go to school, and these kids are looking this stuff up online. You remember that old pervert Jocelyn Elders that Clinton had in his 20 years ago?
Yep.
Remember, she said you need to teach your children how to pleasure themselves, and if they can't do it, you need to reach down there and help them. I mean, what a bunch of weirdos. I mean, these people are running the country. I mean, God, old perverts, all she was. And see, that's what's going on. We need to realize that the United States that we know is quickly now, it's not even slowly anymore, it's quickly disappearing. Christians are being systematically purged from the military because now they're being told they can't call in the name of Jesus or God, and they don't want Christians in the military because they don't want them having a conscience. And so we need to understand that if we don't continue to work together as a group of believers in the aggregate, that what we have and what we had in this country and the little that is left is simply going to disappear, and we're not going to have it any longer. But let's go ahead and let's take a look at what's going on with the drug culture right now. I want to talk about how are Americans taking too many drugs. You know, what's interesting to me right now, I believe at the age of 60, 40% of the population takes 5 or more prescription drugs a day, Doug. And we're going to talk about this now. We're going to go into. I mean, it's crazy how many drugs people take, and how they don't seem to get better from the drugs they're taking. And the reason for that is the drugs that they're taking, except unless you're taking like an antibiotic or something like that, they're not really treating the problem. They're treating the symptom. And the money is not in you guys and us taking a bottle of antibiotics and being better if we have a cut or something happen with an infection. The money is creating a disease like diabetes, adult onset diabetes, which the person can stay on drugs for years, if not decades, in order to increase the profits of the pharmaceutical cartels that run the planet, which are also tied together with the banking cartels, which also control the media. And so this whole thing is tied together as this giant Ponzi scheme of interlocking corporate directorships, and these guys are constantly just supporting each other's organizations and countries all around the world because they're pretty much owned by the same Rothschild, Sabbatean, Frankist banking cartel that is running the United States right now. And so a lot of what's going on is obfuscation. A lot of what's happening around the world is obfuscation. They simply don't want us to wake up. And what I talked about tonight is one of the most important things that I've ever discussed on your show when we talked about the entire relationship going all the way back to Genesis chapter 6, all the way through, and what's happened in the United States and around the world globally with all of these human sacrifices that are taking place. You know, Russ Dizdar thinks there's like 100 million people now that have been, given over to Lucifer, and he's probably right. And these are the sleeper cells, he calls them, that are all over the United States. But let's go into this about Americans taking too many drugs. This is an article I just pulled up. It says Americans take too many prescription medications. In 2014, Americans filled 4.3 billion prescriptions while spending a record of $374 billion on medications. 2014 spending on prescription drugs hit the highest level in recorded history, according to the Institute of Healthcare Informatics. And, the craziest thing about this is that why in the world do people use drugs when natural therapies will work? That's what people don't get. If you've got a problem with high cholesterol, Now we've got the statin disaster, which is a really good book that was written on it and talks about all the liver damage and kidney damage from the statins. And I always tell folks, and I've told them before on your show, Doug, and I'm going to tell them again, if your cholesterol, as far as I'm personally concerned, if it's under 300, preferably around 250, don't worry about it. The statin drugs aren't worth the risk. If you do take the statin drugs, only do it for a short period of time. I don't recommend taking them at all. I recommend that your doctor help you with your diet. Heck, you can go to the bodybyted.com website and get a copy of the Eat, Drink, and Be Healthy program, which is what Rod Parsley did, and he took his cholesterol from 600 back down to about 250, 200, in just about a few short months. And you can actually lower cholesterol so quickly using sustained-release niacin. That's one of the easiest ways to lower cholesterol, plus changing your diet, getting off of the dairy products, getting off of the cheese products, drinking more water. There's all kinds of natural things you can do to lower cholesterol without the use of statin drugs, which have side effects, like I said, of destroying the liver and destroying the kidneys. So there's natural ways of doing all of this stuff without the use of drugs in almost every single case, but nobody either doesn't know about them. It's like a few weeks ago we had the lady come over, had the real bad problem with colitis. And she's like 23 years old, and I told this story on the air. And she was like 23 years old, and she came over, and she was basically just kind of crying, and she was in extreme pain. And I told her, this is back a few months back, and I told her, I said, what's wrong? She goes, well, I've got really bad, colitis and inflammatory bowel disease. And she goes, I don't know what's going on. I've had it since I was like 15 years old. For the past 8 years, they want to remove my colon. And I said, really? I said, here, you can do this, this, and this, and that'll help take care of this. It should be better within a few weeks. And she said, really? I said, yeah. Now, remember, you don't know this, but her mother's a doctor. She's a medical doctor. She didn't know what to do for her. And she started on our protocol, Doug, and now here she is, I think, 4 months later, and she has absolutely no pain whatsoever. She's off all the pain medication, and she's doing absolutely great. And she had results within a week. She started feeling so much better. And see, people don't realize how easy it is to feel good, how easy it is to look good without taking a bunch of drugs.
Right.
On Monday, I went over to the college. Harrison's starting his second year of college. This is the end of his sophomore year in high school now. He's the end of his 10th grade year, and he's already got 29 college credits. And they wanted to put him into the collegiate high school program, but we missed the deadline on it. And then we went in there and we talked to the folks there at the college, the university, and we said, we want to talk to you about the collegiate high school program. And they said, we don't know what to do with your son. He's so academically advanced with 29 college hours at the end of his sophomore year in high school that he's literally going to be graduating from high school and college with his AA degree and be a junior at the university with a couple of years. And we really don't have a protocol to follow for this. And then it was so funny. They asked me what I did, and I told them. And then they asked me how old I was, and I told them. And they said, we don't believe you. And they said, I must have to pull my driver's license out. And the reason for that is, I'm energetic. I feel great. I got tremendous energy. I just feel good all of the time. And they couldn't believe it. And then, like everybody in the room, kind of like when I met you, Doug, I'm always the oldest person around now. And when everybody in the room was like they all looked much, much older than me, and you could tell they were all on prescription drugs. And see, that's the thing that you've got to understand. The prescription drugs have their own set of side effects. And before you take any prescription drugs, I urge you to talk to your doctor, talk to your pharmacist. Find out what the side effects of the drugs are. You may find that the side effects of the drugs that they want you to take are worse than the disease they're trying to treat, Doug.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's no doubt about it.
I remember when Jurgen, the first time I went into the guy from the folks over there at the Yalaha's Bakery, the first time they got him on the metformin, the first time they had him on metformin, I went up to his we got like an apartment upstairs. We're really good friends, and I walked up there and said, dude, what are you doing? He was laid out on the couch. He was so sick from the metformin, couldn't even stand up. And that was a year ago. And now, like I said, he just had his blood sugar tested, and they told him he no longer is pre-diabetic. Every single thing is normal. So, by the way, did you know that Australia is now enforcing a $15,000 tax penalty for parents who don't vaccinate? Did you know that?
Yeah, and there's also initiatives, I believe, in California.
Yep, California.
No.
That's right. Well, yeah.
Mandatory vaccination via legislation.
And Ted, how do you fight that? I mean, seriously, if that goes through, how do you fight that? Because if you
with kids, it's pretty easy. All you would have to do is homeschool or move to a state that hadn't planned that. Now, if they don't allow homeschoolers not to be vaccinated, so right now it's just applying to the people in California whose children are in schools that are getting rid of the religious exemptions, apparently, which is nuts. Okay, but if you can't homeschool, and you would have to move to another state, it's all you could do if they wouldn't allow them to be in the school. I know Oregon threw a whole bunch of kids out a few weeks ago because they weren't vaccinated, and most of them have had to be vaccinated now and put back in. So, when you get in these real super, super liberal states, you just got to be really, really careful. Now, if it comes back to the next thing, if they're saying that everybody in the United States has to be immunized via gunpoint for the Ebola vaccine, I don't know, guys. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Either I'm leaving the United States or I'm standing my ground and I'm not going to do this because, again, there's a lot more of us than there are them. How can they possibly force us to take an Ebola vaccine if we don't want to take one? I mean, right. I don't know. I don't even know what all this stuff means anymore. You know what I'm saying? The whole thing is just weird to me. I mean, how in the world can they say this? This is medical tyranny. We're back to concentration camps and experimentation on human beings again. I mean, we're back to Dr. Mengele. I mean, how in the world can we read the stuff that happened in Nazi Germany and think that this type of experimentation is okay with anything in the United States as far as our medical system? I mean, I don't understand it. I mean, maybe you guys can understand it.
No, I mean, we're getting hit on all fronts. I mean, we're getting hit. Look, we're getting hit. Yeah, it's just we're getting slammed by everything, by the forced inoculations, by.
And there's such a disconnect between the time in history when the Nazis carried out these genetic experiments on Holocaust victims till now, where we're at the point where many people even deny the Holocaust ever happened, and the short memory span leads people down to repeating history, sadly.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, people need to understand something. Now, guys, I got a news flash for you. Everybody, listen to me. It wasn't just Jews in the concentration camps. There were Catholics. There were Christians. When these millions of people were killed, it wasn't just Jewish people. I mean, it was all kinds of people. That's why the Jews are so adamant. I got to give them credit for this. I mean, they've got that thing, never again. They're never going to allow themselves to let that happen again. And some of the Jewish groups that are pro-gun are some of the most staunch groups and most staunch advocates for Second Amendment rights because they saw what happened in Nazi Germany. So let's emulate that. Let's say, okay, let's stay with these guys and realize that they've gone through this, because you're absolutely right, Joe. I mean, people want to deny these concentration camps never existed, these slave labor camps never existed. Of course they did. They're still there. So we have to understand something, that we don't want to repeat the past. The problem is the vast majority of the kids in the United States don't even know about World War I, don't even know about World War II. Heck, forget the kids, forget anybody under the age of 40. They have no idea what happened with any of this stuff, because most of their grandparents were either dead or gone by the time they got up a little bit older, and who fought in the war. With me, my dad was born in 1901 from German immigrant parents in Iowa. And, my mom was born in 1915, 1916, and it was pre-Hitler's Germany during World War I, right before the Weimar Republic came in. So I had this stuff constantly thrown at me as a child. I had to remember it and learn it and understand it, because my mom wanted me to know what had happened and what was going on in Germany at that time. That's why on the very first show I did with you guys, if you remember, I told you about how my mom cried when she saw the buildings with 9/11 happen, and she knew that Patriot Act was on the way, which was the German Enabling Act. And see, this is what I was raised with. And so people say, I wrote a whole article. I got a bunch of Christians mad at me. I wrote a whole article, should Christians store food? Because, we carry the organic food on our website, organic, non-GMO, freeze-dried, 20-year shelf-life food at healthmasters.com. And what was interesting is I wasn't doing it to promote that. And I told people, I said in the article what I wrote, I said, look, if you don't want to store food, don't. I'm not telling you that you need to store food. If you're going to do it out of fear, don't. But if you're doing it out of a preparation mindset, then you need to do that. Because you need to understand something. If we don't think about the future, if we don't plan for the future, even the ant does that, we've got to think what happens if we have a natural disaster. What happens if we have an EMP? What happens if any of these horrible things happen? What are we going to do? How are we going to survive? Who's going to take care of us? And see, I've got friends now, so many of them, Doug. I tell them, have you stored up a little bit of food? No. Why not? Well, I don't want to. Why not? No, I don't think anything's going to happen. I'm like, okay. And see, the way I look at it, and I've told you this before in the show, and I'll tell you again, I'll tell everybody again, I've got 20-year shelf food stored up at the house that I bought, and about 18 years from now or whatever, if it's nothing ever happens, I'm going to give it away to a homeless shelter, let them feed the homeless with it, and be done with it. That's how I look at that. I look at it as insurance. We insure our cars in case we get in an accident. We insure our home in case of a natural disaster. Many of us have insurance on our health as far as health insurance in case we get sick, but then we don't want to insure a food supply? Doesn't make any sense to me, guys. Does it make any sense to you guys?
No, not at all. No.
And so we need to do it. But let's jump back on some more nutrition stuff. We're talking about now about about all the poisons that are wreaking a havoc on our body and your health. Whole body toxification is vital to maintain and rejuvenate your health. Now, one of the most important things that you can do is systematic under-eating in order to get your body detoxified. In addition to that, all of the artificial sweeteners, pesticides, herbicides, emulsifiers, stabilizers, and all these other poisonous things need to be avoided, especially the lifeless, carbonated, and contaminated drinks that so many of us drink, not me, but other people. And so always remember, no one ever dies on their first cigarette or their first shot of whiskey or French fries or potato chips or soda or cookie or fried chicken dinner. Okay? Nobody ever dies from that. If they did, they would never do them again. We understand that. But we get these sickness and the diseases that come upon us, and then we have to take these horrible drugs to get rid of the side effects. And so systematic under-eating is one of the best things you can do to get rid of a toxic body. In addition to that, you got to make sure you keep your colon clean. If you've got problems with constipation, there's a really good product we carry. It's called Aloe. It helps to keep the colon clean. Some of the side effects of being toxic are chronic fatigue, inability to get quality sleep, restlessness and agitation during the day and night. My wife, before she started doing the magnesium, used to have really bad night cramps in the middle of the night with her feet. She talked about that last month, and now she doesn't have any of those anymore. A lot of them, the restless leg syndrome, some of that's also caused by that. A sudden onset of weight gain, and also a constipation problem. People don't go to the bathroom sometimes but once a week, for heaven's sakes. Irritable bowel syndrome, acid reflux, poor digestion, bad breath, persistent bad gas, body odor, poor circulation, muscle pains, joint aches, irritability, yellowing of the eyes, premature aging, brittle bones, soft teeth. This goes on and on and on. These can all be symptoms of toxemia in the body, and it's really important that you start avoiding chemicals like glyphosate, trans fats, all of these different things. See, folks who are listening right now, I want you guys to listen for just a second. I've been talking about the top 10 foods never to eat. I've been fighting the globalists since the early 90s. For over 25 years I've been doing this now. I've been telling the truth about the food supply, about GMOs, about vaccinations. I was doing it when people told me I was crazy because I said trans fats and hydrogenated oils were bad, and they told me that I was nuts. They said, you can't say stuff like that. It's not true. I said, every bit of it's true. I was doing it when the vaccination rate was much, much lower, and the autistic rate was like 1 in every 40, 50,000 kids. I was telling people to be careful with the immunizations and the mercury and the thimerosal and the aluminum and all the other things. Now the autism rate in some states are 1 in 38, 1 in 58. It's gotten unbelievable. Now some of the top researchers are saying that by the year 2025, if the current trend doesn't change, half the children will have autism. I mean, does anybody really want that? I mean, this is just absolutely nuts.
I mean, isn't that part of the eugenics plan? I mean, okay.
Well, no, it is, and here's why: because they're not going to breed. Okay, they're not going to breed. The autistic kids aren't going to breed, and then we're going to bring in the state, death squads, eugenics as far as, getting rid of the infirm and the sick, just like Hitler did. And they'll say, well, these kids don't have a quality of life. We need to go ahead and euthanize them and get rid of them. And the sad part about it is they'll never be able to defend themselves or do anything because they're simply not really aware of what's even going on around them. And so it's just one of those things that we have to understand. Again, we talked about this earlier, and we talked about the spiritual aspect of all of this. Lucifer's purpose here is to come rob, kill, steal, and destroy and subdue us by his boot on our throat. He believes that he can create order out of chaos by ruling over us and forcing us to do what he wants us to do. That's the whole goal of the New World Order with this Luciferian agenda. So if they want to come to your home in the middle of the night and take one of your children because they need to have a human sacrifice that night, they believe they should have the right to come do that and take your child away. And, of course, you already see what happens with Child Protective Services and how unbelievably horrible they are in a lot of states and how these kids go into these horrible conditions with this. We already know all about child trafficking. I mean, where do you think all these kids go that are never seen again and they never turn up as adults anywhere?
But you're going to have a hard time convincing people of that. I mean, seriously, you start talking like that, and I'm playing devil's advocate here. You start, that's crazy talk, But it's true if you look at the numbers and look at the architecture of the children's services. People are not getting it, and I think it's important for people to understand that they need to get it. That children's services in many areas. I mean, what might have been a good idea, or at least maybe a safety net, has been compromised and turned into a tool of agent of the devil, for crying out loud.
No, that's exactly right. In fact, if you have anybody show up from the Department of Family Services to your house, they have a right to check the kids, make they're okay, but don't talk to them, don't fill any paperwork out. Get an attorney immediately. Just get an attorney. Just get an attorney immediately and let them know that you're not going to play this game, that you're not going to lay down for them. You've got to have legal representation. It's the same thing. If a police officer pulls you over, and remember, Doug, when you and I did the Power Hour together a few months back, I asked you about this. If you have a police pull you over, if they say, "May I search the car?" your response is always no. You may not without a warrant.
That's right.
Yeah, no, and you don't talk to them. And I'm not being rude to them. What I always say to them, I say, "Look, officer, I'd love to sit down and have a organic pizza with you or whatever, man, with no pepperoni on it. But that's not here. That's not now. I really can't talk to you without my attorney being present. So please forgive me if I don't communicate with you, but I just don't want to say anything because I kind of have a right to remain silent. If you don't mind, here's my driver's license. That's it."
Right.
And see, when you do that, and you're
yeah, you don't have to be an idiot about it. You see these. I see these YouTubes where people are there's a lot of bravado behind the YouTubes where people say, "Well, look, I told that officer off." Well, you don't want to be create an adversarial situation. Where the second you're stopped, obviously, you want to be very professional about this and very. Well, you keep your decorum about you, and they'll have more respect to you, and you'll have equally respect to them. I mean, you know what I mean? And there's going to be exceptions to that, of course. There's going to be the big brutes that are going to want to pull you out through your vent window. Of course, we don't have those anymore, but you know what I mean. So you just want to you don't want to be a jerk. You want to be you want to know your rights. That's all.
Well, no, and that's what I'm always very respectful to them because I'll be quite frankly, most of them don't want to be cops anyhow. After they've been there for a few years, they kind of get hung up in the deal and they want to get their retirement now. And now they're so stressed out from their job, they really don't want to do it. And a lot of them don't even want to write tickets anymore because it's so dangerous. I mean, people don't realize how dangerous it is to walk up to a car in the middle of the night with tinted windows, for heaven's sakes. And so what I always do, if I have a police officer give me a ticket, which I've had multiple tickets in my life in the last, 45 years, what I will do, I roll the windows down when it's nighttime. I just roll the windows down, and I just sit there in the car, turn the lights on in the car, so they can see that I'm not trying to hide a gun. As soon as they walk up, I tell them that I carry a concealed weapon, that I've got a permit for it. I tell them what the gun is. I give them my concealed weapons permit before they ask for anything else. And I'm just very, very respectful to them because when they know you have a concealed weapons permit in the state of Florida or in many of the other states, they know that you don't have a bunch of felonies and you're not some whack-bag. They know that you're a pretty good guy and you're probably going to be there to protect them in the event something happened and they got shot and you had to come to their defense one night. And see, and that's why I had a good friend of mine who was a police officer, Doug, and he told me that one time. He goes, every single time that I pulled somebody over with a concealed weapons permit, he said I would hand them the driver's license back, I would hand them their permit back, and I'll say, just remember, you need to slow down a little bit, and remember, if we ever need your help, please be there to help us. Have a good night, sir. And he said he would never write them a ticket. He would never write them a ticket if they had a concealed weapons permit because he knew that they were his backup.
Exactly. And I just want to tell the listening audience here, I know in Pennsylvania right now, and I'm not sure how it is in Florida or other states, but the state police, they pull you over or they run your plate. Now the database for CCWs, or concealed weapons permit, concealed carry permit, is integrated with the whatever they run. So in other words, before you even get to the side of the road, they know if you are if you've got a concealed weapons permit.
That's right.
That's so. Just keep that in mind. And if I can add this, when this is something that I lost a good friend back in 1987 from he was a Houston cop that was shot and killed in a traffic stop. And ever since then, I've been very, very. And I have a lot of friends who are cops, but. When you do get stopped, make sure you pull over as far as you can. If it's nighttime, not only roll your windows down, but turn on your inside lights. Put the car in park.
That's right.
Put your four-ways on and turn on your inside lights. Put your keys on the dashboard. Keep your hands on the wheel, and you'll be fine. You know, I mean,
That's right.
that way, have some respect because it is one of the most dangerous things.
Right.
That domestics, you know, look.
But domestics are worse. Domestics are horrible. You go to a domestic altercation, and you know, in Polk County where I live, if somebody calls in a domestic altercation, somebody's going to jail. It doesn't matter if they say nothing's happened or no one's happened or no one's been hurt. Somebody's going to jail. If somebody's been hit, somebody's going to jail because they had to stop it because the cops were getting shot because of domestic altercations.
Oh yeah.
And so it's crazy. And so police officers. I remember I had a friend of mine. He's an attorney. His name's Lagoria. And he told me one time, he's one of the top defense attorneys here in Central Florida, and he told me his name is John Lagoria, and he told me, he says, Ted, he goes, it's interesting with police officers. They take the people with pretty much the lowest IQ, they give them a badge and a gun, and they tell them to protect us. And he goes, and that's what you've got to understand when you get into a traffic situation. He said, you've got to realize that these guys are probably scared. They don't know what you're doing or who you are, and the news probably worn off their job, and they're a little bit geeked up. And so you just have to be real careful with them and just be real respectful with them. He goes, and most of the time, nothing will happen. He goes, but if you start creating a problem and start being insolent with them, he said, you're going to have a problem with it. And he said, there's a high probability you're going to end up getting arrested for resisting right. and getting tasered and everything else if you don't get shot. And he goes, it's just easier with the way that we've been militarized now not to allow those things to happen. It really, really is. And see, the sad part about it is so many people in the United States don't realize how important it is to show respect to police officers, because the police officers in some areas have gotten absolutely awful. But, you know, guys, you got to remember, you know, I'd rather have police in the United States. I'd rather have some type of law enforcement than I would anarchy or chaos. I really would. And so we've got to have some type of law, even though some of them are kind of out of hand now as far as what they think they can and can't get away with. And I'm aware of all of that. And I cover a lot of those stories all the time on the Power Hour because people don't realize how bad it is. Now, let's go back to Dr. Oz real quick if we can.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Oz came out a few weeks ago about glyphosate, Monsanto's and regulators allowing its release, and Monsanto declined to participate to honor April 7th as the World Health Day. Dr. Oz covered the World Health Organization's with recent declassification of the herbicide, and he went into detail on how bad glyphosate is. Now, glyphosate is something that you need to realize that you need to never, if you use it, okay, if you get it on you, you need to make sure you scrub down. You need to be like wearing a hazmat suit if you're going to use it, and a respirator so you don't breathe it because of all the chemicals and all the what it does to the liver and to the kidneys. It's a super toxic poison. If you have to use it to get rid of weeds in your yard, and vinegar doesn't work, what you can do is you can make sure that you tell your children to make sure they wear shoes and not walk out in the yard barefoot until you've had 2 or 3 rains to rinse that stuff off, because you've got to stay away from that stuff because of it's an endocrine poison. It's a systemic poison.
What is that, Roundup?
Be very, very careful with Roundup.
Okay, so what you're talking about is the key ingredient in Roundup, right?
Yes, it's glyphosate is what it's called. It's a key ingredient. I apologize, Doug. Sometimes I say glyphosate. I think everybody knows what that is. But that is the key ingredient in Roundup and weed killers. And that's why Dr. Oz slammed it like he did. And, of course, they jumped all over him. And he's if he's not careful, he's either going to get himself completely zippered as far as what he can and can't say, or he's going to end up getting taken off the air. Because it's just one of those deals. Okay, another article, I want to read it to you. The New York Attorney General and now 13 other Attorney Generals take their assault on supplements to Congress. People aren't aware of this. 13 other Attorney Generals are now they want to treat supplements like drugs. Problem is, no way you can pay billions for FDA approval, and most of your supplements are going to disappear. This is a major action alert. I'm reading you right now. The New York Attorney General, Eric Schneiderman, has again upped the ante in his assault on the supplement industry. We recently reported how Schneiderman used poorly designed and now completely discredited analysis to discredit some herbal supplements. But now this guy is going around to these other states, and he's trying to get vitamins banned again. And this is going to go on and on and on until the people in the United States either become so old or so sick or so stupid that they don't realize what's happening, and they're going to take away our rights to buy vitamins, just like they've done with many supplements now in Europe. Because once they can turn them into a patented item being produced by drug companies by prescription only, your fish oil will go from $15, $20 a bottle up to $100 a bottle, and you don't have a choice. You have to get it through your doctor's prescription if you can get a doctor to write a prescription for it. And that's what's going to happen if we're not careful in the United States as this creeping tyranny begins to envelop the country. And see, so what we're being told with all of this obfuscation that's going on, is don't worry about this, don't worry about that. But it's like you said earlier in the show, Doug, we're being hit with all of this stuff from all of these different fronts all at the same time. Then we have to do stuff like we have to wonder why we've got thousands of miles of underground roads and bunkers in the United States. What the heck do they want to do with all that stuff? I mean, so we've got all these crazy things that are going on all at once right now, and I'm not sure if it's all for obfuscation, try to prevent something from that something's really bad is about to happen and they don't want us to know about it. But I think everybody can feel in their spirit something's not right. You were talking earlier about the weird weather patterns of the snow flurries up there in Pennsylvania today. I mean, we've got the weirdest weather patterns right now in Florida that I've ever seen. We don't even have it's not even the Sunshine State now. We've turned into the chemtrail state. And you know, it was funny because I was talking to Dr. Miller the other day on the Power Hour, and he's an interesting guy. I can't recommend him for an interview, but he's an interesting guy. And what was funny about that, he was talking about the chemtrails and all the different things and all the geoengineering. And sadly, that most people still, Doug, they still don't believe in chemtrails or geoengineering. They still don't believe it. They can look up and see them. I can show them the reports of my water system, and they still can't believe it. They won't believe it because of normalcy bias, because of learned helplessness. They simply can't believe the government is doing this. And I wish they would just tell us why they're doing it. I mean, if it's to try to kill us, it's one thing. If it's trying to prevent some other type of catastrophe that's about to happen, that's okay. Let's try to get the word out so we can know what's going on. I mean, what do you think about all that, Doug? Why do you think people don't want to believe this stuff?
Well, it's cognitive dissonance. I mean, there's a whole, to me, and I was really thinking about this because you talk to your neighbors and friends and coworkers and family members, and even family, maybe even especially family members, about well, you name it. I mean, chemtrails, for example. And I was a very hard sell on this. I'd look up in the sky and say, that's normal stuff. Well, wait a minute. No, it's not. Okay, but then you start to think, okay, well, if they're spraying something up there, why are they doing it, and why are they hiding it? And if they were spraying it, wouldn't at least somebody talk? Well,
people ask, well, the pilots who spray these chemtrails would certainly have come out by now. Some of them explaining what they're spraying and why they're spraying.
So the lack of, and this is what I would say, the lack of tangible evidence is perhaps one of the most, I don't know. I think that has a lot to do with it.
Well, see, I think the evidence is there. I just think the willingness not to believe because when I say the evidence is there from movies like what in the world are they spraying, Ted, what you've done,
right.
People have taken the particles to laboratories and found that they are riddled with heavy metals such as aluminum and barium and sulfur.
That's right.
And there's no explanation.
Yep.
There's no other explanation as to where these chemicals would come from in the environment. And what they're doing is weakening the soils, so people who have plants and gardens make it harder for them to grow. They are people having their children's hair checked and finding out there's heavy metals in their children's hair and in their systems, and it's weakening our immune system as well as our agricultural system.
Well, it's so funny. It's so funny. I listened to your show last night with Bob Fletcher, part of it, and it was interesting to me because he's convinced that Planet X or an archetype or something like this, or an asteroid or something's coming in. Something's happening, and that's why they're doing the deep underground bunkers. But the point is, and the thing that I really don't understand, maybe you guys can help clear this up for me because. I don't really want to believe any of that stuff. It seems weird when you start looking at the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in off-book balance sheets. The Fed refuses to say what happened to the money. And in addition to that, we know the underground bunkers are real. When we watched the show with Jesse Ventura a few years ago, conspiracy theory, in which he took us inside of one of them. We got just a plethora of videos of these things of truck drivers that have taken pictures with their cell phones, and videos with their cell phones, and some of them are saying that they're hundreds of miles long underneath the miles up to a mile deep. I mean, we know this stuff is real. Okay, all these things. But the point is, why are they spraying us Miller said it was because they're trying to keep the planet cool because Planet X is coming, but now whether he's right or not, I don't know. But the point is, why are they spraying us? Why are they giving us all this poison? Why are they trying to do forced immunizations on us? Why are they trying to take our vitamin rights away? Why are they trying to bring in a one-world currency? Why are they trying to bring in a one-world government? Why are they trying to bring in a satanic hierarchy? Why are they taking away our rights to raise our own children? Why are they doing all of this stuff if we really do have a Planet X coming in that's going to wipe out the population anyhow?
Good
Doesn't
question.
that seem odd to you?
Good point.
Yeah, because think of everybody. Listen to me for a second on that. Why are they doing all of these other things? Why do they care about our vitamin rights? Why do they care about who's going to be the next president? Why do they care about any of this stuff if we're all going to check out in a few years anyhow? So think about what I'm asking. Why in the world are they doing all of this stuff if the end result is that everybody's supposed to check out? That doesn't make any sense to me. That's why it creates this dissonance in me as far as Planet X, because I've heard this thing, it was supposed to happen back 20 years ago, then 15 years ago, then 10 years ago, then 5 years ago, then 3 years ago, and finally you're going, whatever, man, because it seems almost if you start talking about all of this stuff, you start losing credibility, especially when you put timelines on it, because why are they still doing what they're doing? Why are they closing up Walmarts unless they're going to be using them for a troop supply system? I guess we could do that, because a lot of them are by railroads. They have the whole system built in already. But why do they care if everybody's going to check out? Why do they care if we're going to be completely wiped out by a giant tidal wave and the whole world's going to end? Why are they doing all this stuff? So there's something going on, Joe, that they're not telling us that's pretty bad. But again, why are they continuing to harass us while we're here? Let's just to create obfuscation so we don't realize the true truth. But anybody who's being led by the Holy Spirit will tell you right now, something is wrong. That's what my mom said in Germany when before World War II started. She kept saying it. Everybody knew that something was wrong. Something was wrong. Something was wrong. And all of a sudden, all hell broke loose in Germany and Europe. But we know that something's wrong. We know something's not right. We know that we've got the Third Reich marching down the streets of Boston now, metaphorically. We know all of that stuff's happening in the United States right now. We know it's 1938 in Berlin, and we're here. We're there. We know right where we are right now. But yet, why are they doing all of this stuff to us if we're all fixing to check out? That's the thing that's interesting. Why are they trying to mandate forced vaccines? So what's really, really going on? What is the elite agenda? And it could just be eugenics. It could just be population control and reducing the population, and perhaps they're building these underground bases and bunkers because they can, and because just in case we decide we've had enough of that, what they're doing to us, they won't have a place to retreat to. I don't know. But here's what's interesting. I have a good friend of mine. His name's Mike Florentino. The Florentino restaurant chains here in Central Florida. Good friend of mine. I've known him for many years. He was suffering with extreme depression when I met him. His son had died on a motorcycle accident, so I put him on a full protocol as far as helping him get off the medicine along with his medical doctor that he was taking that was making him suicidal. Now he's doing absolutely great. His energy's through the roof. And he told me that he had a friend of his who worked for the EPA who came to the restaurant about twice a month. And he said he had the badge, right, not EPA, of the Department of Homeland Security. He worked for the Department of Homeland Security and with FEMA. And he said he even had the badge. And he said that he was real high up in the government. He controlled like the southeastern United States. And he told Mike that a few months ago they brought him up into Washington and told him that if something bad happened, like a nuke went off in Washington, D.C., that they would have a place for him, his wife, and 4 other of his friends and family members in an underground bunker complex up there in the Virginia area. Now, he told that to Mike. So what are these guys planning for? Because the reality is I don't believe they're going to detonate nukes. They could use a fuel air bomb, which is extremely explosive, which kind of like a little mini nuke, I guess, but doesn't leave the radiation signature, and I don't guess it doesn't tear holes into the fabric of space-time. I guess that's what they might do and say it was a nuclear bomb. I don't know, or they could detonate something like that and spread plutonium everywhere or some kind of radioactive stuff if it was a dirty bomb. But the point is, what are they planning on doing, and why are so many of these places like the CIA moving out to Denver, and all of these different things are happening? What are they planning to do, Doug, Joe? Have you guys got a handle on it yet?
If I had to guess, from all the research I've looked at, Planet X or Nibiru to me is some kind of metaphor, whether it's a metaphor
that's like an archetype. That's right.
The coming of the Antichrist or the coming of the Satan opening the portals of hell is the best guess I guess I would put together from all the research I've looked at, after looking at so many people's claims of being able to see it in the sky and getting it on tape, two suns here and there, it doesn't to me appear that any dwarf planet's going to come out of nowhere and present itself. But between the predictions or prophecies of asteroids coming and the things in the Earth changing the way they are, especially in the times that we live in, I do believe that it is some kind of metaphor for some entity or entities that are about to make their presence known on this Earth.
Yeah, and the other thing, Ted, and I think you struck right to the heart of it too. You've got right now, on the internet, you've got so many people with so many contradictory claims, whether it's about Planet X or about Jade Helm or about whatever the flavor of the crisis or whatever crisis flavor there is. And I do believe a lot of these are planted. A lot of the more vocal people are planted by the government, of course. And in the end, and I think people really need to take a step back and look at what's going on. You've got a lot of marginalization of people that would be otherwise. You've got a lot of very intelligent people on the internet, and then you've got people that are really rabble-rousing and spreading disinformation. But looking at the intelligent people, I think that if you happen to plant disinformation among cadre of the intelligent people on there and articulate people, what do? You get confusion. And what do they want? They want confusion. Ultimately, they want to marginalize all of us in the alternative media, so we look like a bunch of kooks, basically. And so none of us, or none of the information that we spread or disseminate will be believed, and they'll just say, look, he was wrong on this, he was wrong on that, if it's demonstrably provable, okay? And so why should we believe him on Jade Helm? Why should we believe him on this? And the other thing, too, before I turn it back over to you, Ted, I really believe that what is coming, I do believe in a economic disaster, okay, economic apocalypse. But I also believe as well that what we're seeing is a very subtle. I mean, look at the subtlety. Can you imagine 50 years ago if they would be voting on homosexual marriage unions or whatever you're going to call them in the Supreme Court 50 years ago? It wouldn't have happened. So what happened in the last 50 years to get us to this point? It was a subtle transcendence. Everything was very subtle, like the frog in the pot of water. So I do believe that the subtlety is part of Satan's tactics, and I really think that we have to look at the subtle aspect of things. So, people expecting Jade Helm to go hot, maybe it will, but I think the real insidious nature of things like Jade Helm and other exercises is that subtle. Let's condition the public. Let's make it okay. Because don't forget, people, 30 years ago, if this would have happened in the streets of America, people would have been yelling and screaming. 9/11, Oklahoma City before that, the Trade Center before that, everything. See, I mean, to me, there's this tactical, deliberate tactical plan, strategy. Because you know what, Ted? They don't want just a portion of us. They want all of us. And when I say they want all of us, they want all of our souls.
Well, that's exactly right. You said something. You said something was, I think, a Freudian slip to coin a phrase. You said subtle transgression, and then you said transformation or change or whatever.
Yeah,
you said subtle transgression. No, but think about what you said though. You said subtle transgression. See, it's the subtle transgression. It's the little fox that spoiled the vine. It's not making a phone call. That's one. Not doing this. That's two. Breaking this dietary law. Breaking this just law out of the Bible. Breaking this thing. This thou shalt not covet. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not this. Little things that you do. You think, well, that's okay. It's a little white lie. It's a little this. It's a little that. And we started compromising. I remember I was watching that movie one time with, it was Fiddler on the Roof. The guy. Topoli or whatever his name is. The guy was a phenomenal movie, by the way, if you guys ever want to watch it. And it was a great theater, a great play in New York for years. And I'll never forget it. He was singing that song, and he said, he was talking about tradition, and he said, if you pull out the plug and the boat starts to sink, and you sink your own boat because you let a little bit of water in, he goes, where does it stop? And see, I think that says a lot about what you just said. When we pull out the plug and we start letting the boat sink, and we can't get the plug back in the boat. I remember one time I launched my ski boat, gosh, it was 25 years ago, and I didn't have a plug in the bottom of it. And I've been driving around the lake, about to pull a skier. I look down, I got my feet in water. I mean, I got 6 inches of water. My motor's about to go under the water. I cannot believe it. So I'm digging around trying to get back to shore, and I got water pouring in. So I shove a rag down the side of the hole, thinking this is nuts. And I turn on my bilge pumps and everything else, trying to find the doggone plug. Then I finally find the plug, which is pushed up under the motor, which is hot as blue blazes by now. And finally, I screw the plug back in, and luckily I noticed that I was able to get the plug back in before the boat sank. The point is, that's what's happened to the United States. We pulled out the plug. We pulled out the plug in the 50s when they tried to warn us about the communist takeover of Hollywood. They tried to warn us what was going on with the McCarthy hearings. They tried to warn us that our whole culture was going to be subverted by what was going to happen. They tried to tell us, and nobody wanted to listen. We were fresh off the adrenaline after defeating the Nazis and the Japanese. Our parents were basically, excited about the war was over with. Nobody wanted to pay any attention to it, and they fed us the lie. We believed the lie. We enthralled ourselves with the lie. We embraced the lie, and we started doing the subtle little changes in what we were and what we had done to become an American, including taking prayer out of the school in the 60s, including Roe v. Wade, all of the things that happened. And now we've got ourselves in this moral turmoil where we've got so many people addicted to pornography in the United States. It's like a nightmare. And the sad part about it is they want you to be addicted to pornography. They want you to be they want all of this stuff, the gambling and the pornography. They want all of it. They want you addicted to drugs because every time they do that, they further degrade the moral fiber. Because remember, these Sabbatean Satanists who are running the world's financial system, they're the ones that want to bring in the kingdom of Lucifer. That's their goal, is to bring the jackboot policies of the devil onto the planet Earth and to rule it. That's their goal of the New World Order. And see, if we don't understand that, Paul McGuire does better than anybody I've ever heard explaining all that as far as what's really happening with this New World Order. And the thing about it is, if we don't understand what they're doing to us from a subtle standpoint, these little tiny compromises that we're being forced to make over and over and over and over and over again, and it's exactly what you said a few moments ago. It's like the pot in the frog in the pot of boiling water. They don't know they're cooked until they're dead. And the sad part about it is that's what's going on right now. I'm like you. I don't particularly think Jade Helm's going to go hot, but I don't know. Nobody knows. It really bothers the yak out of me that all these Walmarts closed up. That seems really strange to me, Doug, because you know how much money how much money a supercenter makes in a day in a major metropolitan area, and they shut all these things down, especially 35 miles from my house.
Multiple states, multiple Walmarts, all under the guise of plumbing issues. None of them pulled plumbing permits or hinted that
and all of them by major interstate highways or railroad facilities. Every one of them.
No,
I looked them all up.
Exactly. Now this is something, Ted. I really, if we can spend a little bit of time on talking about this, because there's enough anecdotal as well as direct evidence out there about the Walmarts. People don't understand that the Department of Defense had paid Walmart billions of dollars back in 2004. It's in a CNN Money article.
That's right.
Now what was that money used for? The government, the Defense Department, paying a corporation for what? Okay, so bring it up two decades. What are they collecting? And that's something I think we have to get into here on the other side of the break. Let's take a break for right now. Ted, grab a purple stick there and.
Nah, I've already had enough of those.
All right, we're going to be right back, folks. Hang with us, buddy.
Take our break now. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report with Dr. Ted Breuer. Our guest, his website, healthmasters.com. bodybyted.com. Go to Hagmann. Ladies and gentlemen, hour number 3 of the Thursday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Today is Thursday, April 23rd, 2015. Our guest is Dr. Ted Breuer. His website, healthmasters.com, and Body by Ted. Bookmark his website. You can go there and check out some of their incredible packages that they have put together, some specifically for Hagmann and Hagmann listeners. The Magnesium Pack is the latest one that was launched, and this is a pack that helps people with joint pain, arthritis, in a natural way by using magnesium oil to be put in deodorant, lotion, soaps, and Ted's wife has been on and talked about the rejuvenation of how she has went from being sore from daily activities, from suffering from arthritis, to using this magnesium pack in order to help her gain her mobility back. And as Ted stated, she is like a bundle of energy, running around, taking care of things outside in the garden and around the house, and couldn't be feeling better from her own words. So we're grateful to have Ted as a friend and our health consultant of the Hagmann and Hagmann report, and it's just a treasure trove of information he brings, whether it's nutritional information or even information pertaining to the Bible prophecy and things we see in our current events and world today.
Yeah, and Ted, welcome back. I want to hit this real quick because this is something going around the internet, and we have to address this. Walmart, they're closing the stores now. Ordinarily, and I think that people have to look at the bigger picture, Ted. I think that, for example, this would be a non-starter perhaps outside of the Jade Helm exercises. Jade Helm would be a non-starter outside of, we'll say, the right now the Fourth Amendment decimation, where the NSA is collecting 1.7 billion emails a day. They're collecting 350 million text messages a day, 160,000 Facebook pages per day. Okay, once more, we're looking at situations where we're being spied on through phone calls, social media, searches via Google, emails, bookstores. Okay, it's amazing that this is actually happening. Stingray devices, Doppler radar, mobile body scanners, and on and on and on. So, every situation that we see by itself could be explained away. But when you look at the totality, then you've got to ask some pretty hard questions, including Walmart. What do you think is happening here?
I think that what they're doing is they're putting together basically a foreshadowing of what they're planning on doing. I think that they're going to be doing a lot more stuff than they're telling us they are in these exercises. I don't think there's some kind of secretive mission. I mean, otherwise, why are they bringing all these tanks in? And why am I seeing M1 Abrams tanks on the interstate, or Fletcher Barrett did the other day? I mean, why is this happening? I mean, why in the world are we having all of these troop transports and all of these trains being loaded up, being brought down to the floor to bring in all these huge amounts of artillery and all these other things are bringing in, I guess? I mean, why is this happening? I mean, why do we think this is okay? I mean, that's number one. Number two is, it's kind of like this. Do you remember back in the Gulf War, when everybody said, well, we're not going to go to war, not going to go to war? This is back in World War, the 1991, back with with what happened with George Bush Jr. Sr. And my friends were saying, well, we'll never attack. They'll leave. We're not going to attack Iraq. We're not going to do this. We're not going to go free the Kuwaitis. They're all going to pull out. And I said, you don't put hundreds of thousands of troops on the ground with all of this equipment and not use it. It's too expensive. It's just too expensive. Feeding this many people is too expensive. And that's the problem that I've got with Jade Helms. I've got a lot of people now that are telling me they're leaving the United States. I had another one tell me today that they said they're not going to be here for the Jade Helm exercises. And I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do because, all of our passports are being tracked down at every single point of entry throughout the world. I mean, I don't know where we think we can go. I mean, this isn't 1937 anymore. I mean, we don't have the ability to flee Nazi Germany. I mean, we don't have the ability to go anywhere. This one world Sabbatean Frankist cult of the all-seeing eye has pretty much taken over the whole planet, except for China, and China's even got a central bank, and there's control through the Bank of International Settlement. So what we have to realize is that we've got a mess. And maybe whether it goes hot this time or not, this is like a prelude, like a foreshadowing you read in a book about something that may happen. But remember with the Boston bombing, when it happened up there, they were doing a bombing exercise. There was a bomb going off. Remember when they had NORAD stand down? They were doing a drill with 9/11, and all of a sudden it went hot. I mean, are you kidding me? I heard Jack Blood say the other day. He said something very, very interesting. He was talking about how a lot of people said there were no planes in 9/11. There were just no planes. There were holograms or drones or whatever, and the actual aircraft that were supposedly used weren't used. And he said something that I thought was very interesting. He said, they're right in half of that analogy. At least we know they're right. We know there wasn't a plane that hit the Pentagon. We know that. And we know there wasn't a plane that crashed in that field in Pennsylvania where they said that it did. We know that because there was no wreckage, there was no body parts, there was no luggage, there was nothing. So he said, so 50% of that statement is true. Now, whether the planes hit the trade towers, whether they were the actual American airline flights or they were drones, we don't know. For heaven's sakes, all that evidence was destroyed. But the point is this. They were doing a drill. They were doing a drill. And so here we go, another drill. And so, again, all this troop deployment, all of this stuff they're doing with the Walmarts closing, if they hadn't closed the Walmarts, I thought, well, whatever. And now we've got these people saying there's all these underground tunnels under the Walmarts. Well, I don't know. Gosh, I haven't seen any of the tunnels. But I know this, that it'd be really hard to tunnel in the state of Florida because the aquifer's too high. I mean, you'd be getting water the whole time. So I don't even know how that's even possible. So we got all of this crazy stuff and these crazy things being said. But whether any of us know if any of it's true or not, I don't know. Now, am I planning on being here? Well, I already promised Rodney Howard-Browne that I'd be at his this meeting that we're having in D.C. in July because he's having he was on with you guys last month. Thank you, by the way, for letting him speak for a little bit of time like you did. And he wants to have that big thing up in Rush Dizdar. Hopefully, he'll be able to go there, and hopefully we'll be able to get Dave Hodges there, and hopefully we'll be able to get a lot of the people like you guys up there to support that. Because the truth is, if we don't go up there and talk to our congressional representatives, if we don't go up and talk to our senators, if all we want to do is yak about how bad things are, but we don't want to try to change anything, at least from a government standpoint, I don't want a civil war in the United States. I don't want anything to go hot. My God, who would be nuts enough to want that? I want Congress and the Senate to take back the country, to do what they need to do to restore the Constitution and to restore the United States back to what it was when I was a child. That's what I want, Doug. That's what I want, Joe. That's what I want, listeners, if you're listening to me tonight. I don't want Jade Helm to go hot. I don't want to have live gunfire in my neighborhood. So you don't understand. If they come in here with an MRAP with a 50 caliber machine gun on it, they start discharging 50 caliber rounds in our neighborhood, those rounds don't stop. They don't stop after they hit a concrete block wall. They go through houses. They start discharging that kind of stuff around us. That's like an anti-artillery. That's like artillery, like a small artillery piece, a 50 caliber machine gun, much less a 20 millimeter cannon. If they brought those in, we don't want this stuff going hot here. This is the United States of America. The last time we had a big war here was the Civil War with the aggression of the North against the South, because Lincoln was trying to subdue the South to force more taxes on them to try to turn it into a communist state, I guess, because Lincoln was good friends with Karl Marx. You guys need to read the book. The South Was Right. Now remember, my mom's from Germany. We had our own problems in Germany with my half of my DNA. My grandfather didn't come over on my dad's side until like 1870, 1880 after the Civil War. So I don't have an axe to grind in here with the southern states and the northern states and this war. But you need to realize what Lincoln did and what Sherman did when he shelled Atlanta and killed all those women and children and marched and created a 60-mile wide swath under Lincoln's orders and broke the back of the South. And all the South wanted to do was succeed from the nation and have their own country, which was not forbidden by the Constitution, I might add. And so the sad part about it is that war power stuff that was exercised by Lincoln and then that's being exercised now by Obama to do all these things that he wants to do. Because you got to remember something, guys. This is not Obama. Obama's a sock puppet for Satan. I'm going to repeat that. Obama, Hillary Clinton, I believe all of these people have been possessed. I believe they're like Rush Dizdar talks about, and I believe what we talked about earlier is how they've been fractioned and how their brains have been split and how their personalities have been split. I don't believe that any of these people are in control. Even Bill Clinton said, by the time you get to this level, you realize that somebody else makes all the decisions and there's a shadow government. That's what Bill Clinton said in one of his moments of clarity, because I guess he began to realize that even this avatared body that he was in couldn't continue to lie about everything. So what we have to understand is this. If we don't get back to the fundamentals of saying, hey, these are the people that are doing this. It's the central bankers. It's the Sabbatain Frankist Satanists that are doing this. These are the people that are involved in all of this. These are the people that have said the things. Now, I got under some criticism when I interviewed Henry McCow on y'all's show a few months ago. I got a letter the other day about all that, and he was, because he's a former Sabbatain, guy, right? That's what he was. And he basically rebelled against all that, wrote a book, Illuminati 1, 2, and 3, which I highly recommend everybody reads. And we were very clear on there that this is not a, quote, anti-Semitic comment when we talk about the Jewish folks that have become Satanists, because there's a bunch of Jewish folks that haven't become Satanists, because there's also Christians that have become Satanists, Roman Catholics that have become Satanists, but we have to understand that there's a group of people out there that are really, really bad people, like the Bushes and like the Clintons, that are running the country, that go to Bohemian Grove, they go to Bilderberger, they go to the Council of 300, who are involved in all of these different affairs that take place throughout the United States and throughout the world as far as bringing in a new world order under Lucifer. That's who these people are. These are not good people, and if they're involved in Jade Helms, you don't know what they're going to do, what they're going to say, or what precipitating incident they're going to say is going to happen. Don't you remember the Boston bombing? They went door to door and searched the homes against the people's wishes, taking people out of their houses and throwing them on the ground and handcuffing the residents of the house if they said anything to try to find these guys supposedly that set off this bomb. That's tyranny. That's not justice. That's horrible, horrible police action. That's Red China. That's North Korea. That's Stasi Germany, East Germany. That's what that is. That is not America. That's not the America, Doug, that I was raised in. It's not the America at all. So I don't know.
Look, even beyond that, people have to understand that last year alone, 2014 alone, and think about this: across the United States, there were 80,000 SWAT raids against residences. Okay, 80. Now think about that: 80,000 SWAT raids. But you know what? The majority of them, well over 70%, were for misdemeanors. The servants of warrants regarding misdemeanors. So think about that for a moment. A misdemeanor level offense warranting a SWAT raid. And out of that 80,000 number, I don't recall, I believe it was right around, it was under 1,000, but it was a surprising number. The cops got the wrong address. And all of these were done in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning. But taking the rest out, 80,000 SWAT raids in 1 year for misdemeanor violations. This, according to John Whitehead, who wrote the book Battlefields America, which I recommend everyone read, as well as Government of Wolves by the same author.
Well, tell me the name of that book again. I'm going to get it.
Battlefield America.
It's called Battlefield America.
Yeah, it just came out on the 14th of April, and the one
John
before
Whitehead.
that. Yeah, John Whitehead, and the one before that, Government of Wolves. But to think about, and also Radley Balko has written a book called the militarization of the police. I think that's the name of it. I don't have it right here handy, but he gets into the war on drugs and how that entire narrative has framed the militarization of the police forces, and how the war on drugs is nothing more and nothing less than just a fictional narrative, as is the war on terror. Terror, of course, is a tactic, and the war on drugs, of course, is a rather circular war as we're bringing in the drugs, and it's just ridiculous. So, the CIA and the mob are running all the drugs. We know that. The CIA has become the mob. They're the ones that were involved in the killing of the last real president we have in the United States, John F. Kennedy, which I'm old enough to remember who he was and him being the president, which most people can't remember. Well, of course, a lot of people listening to this program probably can, because we have an older demographics. But the point is, it's one of those things. I mean, he was the last president that we had, and there's that video that you can watch online again that I've mentioned before. I'll mention it again. It's called JFK to 9/11. It's a rich man's trick. It's got millions of views now. JFK to 9/11. It's a rich man's trick. This author, actually lists the 18 conspirators and the people who were actually involved in the shooting of the president. Shows their pictures and everything else, and talks about the plausible way they could have done this. And then he goes on to say that the whole drug war is a joke. It's the CIA bringing in drugs on military aircraft. Now Afghanistan is the number one opiate producer in the world. It's just crazy. And by the way, I did find the mechanism. I'm writing an email on it. So if you want people to sign up, they can sign up for the healthmasters.com website. I'm sending an email out on this next week on how aspartame, which is the drug that's used in diet sodas, I call it a drug. It's basically an opiate in the body and releases chemicals in the brain, dopamine, in order to make people get super addicted to aspartame. And Donald Rumsfeld, who was internally involved in getting this product approved when he was the president of GD Searly,
is the one who did that, and basically he knew, I believe, as far as I can't prove it, but I would say he knew it, that it's a brain entrainment molecule. So if you're drinking diet soda or drinking aspartame or drinking Crystal Light with aspartame in it, you need to stop immediately. Oh, one more quick thing I got to before I forget. During the break, we were talking about somebody who said that you have to fast, try to bring back the kingdom of God. If you're not used to fasting, start with one meal a day. Don't try to do for extended fast, and make sure you drink a lot of purified water that doesn't have any chlorine or fluoride in it. We've got distillers at healthmasters.com that are great. The chlorine and fluoride are both they're both halogens, and they absorb into the thyroid gland. They mess up thyroid function, which is a major endocrine gland, and they can really cause a problem with you gaining weight. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to pour a bunch of water that has chlorine and fluoride, plus the fluoride will lower your IQ score on top of everything else. But don't pour that stuff into your body, because it's all a poison. It's very, very important that you avoid chlorine and fluorine and also bromine, which is in breads, especially if you're fasting, and the bread wouldn't be a problem, but you don't want to be drinking a bunch of contaminated water if you're fasting. That's very, very important. And start off with a meal, then do 2 meals, and then go to a day, and then try to do that once a week for a while. I've been on a whole bunch of 7-day fasts, probably over a dozen of those, probably 20 of those over the last 30 years. And that can be pretty taxing on the body, so make sure you're doing that under the supervision of a physician if you're doing it for an extended period of time.
Okay, well, good
sorry
advice.
to digress like that, but I just want to mention that.
Well, no, and I think, look, we have a lot of people who want to fast, and of course, Pastor Langford is I think he's the only guy I know who's ever fasted for a 40-day period, but that takes a lot of I've
never done that. Most of them have ever gone 7 days.
Yeah, and I'm lucky if I can go through 7 hours, but I get that. But we've been talking about a lot of things here, and one of the things too coming up for vote next week, or coming up not for vote, but for in front of the Supreme Court, and that was what you mentioned about the prayer and fasting, of course, is the talk about the homosexual marriage, and you know what, Ted, I just want to bring this up because I don't think people understand the gravity of this. I don't think that people understand the fact that they don't know the history behind the homosexual agenda, that it has its roots in the Fabian socialists. Very simply, people probably never heard of the Mattachine Society. Henry Hay, look that up. Look up the Stonewall riots of 1969. Look up the March on D.C. in 1993. Understand who and what Antonio Gramsci was. Again, a Fabian socialist. This is a platform of the Communist Party, and look, I got to tell you, up until 1973, and you know this, homosexuality was considered a mental disorder by the DSM. Yep, and it was changed not because of any diagnostic change, but because of pressure by the pressure against the American Psychiatric Association, by the Gay Activists Alliance. And so, folks, understand that right now we are seeing the fruits of what, Ted? 50 years plus. Well, it depends on where you want to start, but in earnest, last 50 years of this assault in the New World Order. People have to understand it's going to be communist in nature and Islamic. I believe it's going to have elements of Islam as the one world religion. So let's look at this as in its entirety. So anyway, I don't know where I don't how do I get off on that?
Well, remember we talked about earlier when we talked about communism, and communism is one of has a lot of its root in the Druid worship. And
that's right.
The thing that really this is what was interesting to me when I started doing the research on the soul and all that stuff in the last few months, is that the Druidic worship has been something that has gotten started back with the Nephilim back in Genesis chapter 6, and it's come all the way through. And that's the stuff that brought in the Kabbalism. That's the stuff that allowed the Egyptian, the ruler with the Pharaoh's sorcerer, when Moses threw down the staff and it turned into a snake. That's what allowed him to throw down his staff and turn it into a snake. That's what the Bible says happened. I'm not making that up. So that's how much power these guys have with this Druidic satanic worship, because he gives them the power to do these things by changing that energy field that we talked about earlier in the show. And the sad part about it is that's why we've got to stand in prayer. We've got to stand in prayer against all of this stuff with the communist agenda in the United States. Russia has proven that communism doesn't work. They've proven it. I mean, a couple of years ago, I was in Machu Picchu, and I was taking the train in Peru to Machu Picchu up in the Andes Mountains, and I met a whole group of kids that they were in their 20s, and they were from Russia, and they were some of the nicest people I've ever met. And they were telling me about all the things that had changed in Russia and how Russia had gotten all of this going on, and the communism was behind them now, and that they were basically capitalists now, and how great everything was going in Russia. And I was really, really happy for him. And then I talked to another kid who was at that area in Russia when that meteorite exploded. He was like, 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 miles or whatever it was away from it. He said he thought he was going to die. He said all the buildings around him, all the glass was blown out of them. He said he couldn't believe what he had seen happen in the sky. See, and that's the thing that none of us really understand what's going on. I mean, maybe we've got a big meteorite shower coming this way nobody wants to talk about. But then it goes back, why are they doing all this other stuff to us before the meteorite shower gets here? Why can't they just let us live in peace and have some fun here if all this stuff's going to end up this way anyhow, like the book of Revelation says? It's not going to be happy.
Right, and I'd be very cautious about warning about some cataclysmic event, only because what you said. I mean, look at the. If you were running things if you were saying running things, would you how would you do it? Once more, I'm advocating that subtle nature because it's much easier. And Jade Helm, for example, now Nathan Leal is going to be on tomorrow night talking about the esoteric aspects of Jade Helm. But I got to tell you something. I really believe that Jade Helm is an artifact now. Okay, what we're seeing now is the flash bang of an initiative of an operation that started a long time ago, infiltration of patriot groups, of patriot movements, of various other militia organizations, especially in the Southwest. And what we're seeing is this Jade Helm the exercises being the flashbang to take your eyes off of not only the infiltration, but also the other things that are going to be happening elsewhere. And it's just, it's going to serve. It's a multi-purpose operation, but I do believe.
You just said something, Doug. That you just said something that I forgive me for interrupting you, but you just said something that I think everybody needs to hear what you said. Jade Helm can be used to take our eyes off of other things they're going to be doing while Jade Helm is going on, because Jade Helm is going to be the primary news story in the Patriot movement. And what's going to happen is they can do anything anything else they want to do, as long as they're creating so much obfuscation with Jade Helm.
Right, exactly. Now, I've got a problem with Jade Helm for a lot of reasons, obviously, and I'm certainly not going to dismiss it, or I'm not going to say, what other people are saying. I'm not going to disagree with other people when they say, well, man, this is a problem. It could very well be this or that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying let's think a little bit bigger, a little bit wider. Look at the whole shebang here. And what concerns me, and since when was it okay to have military mixing with our police officers, mixing with, and since when was it okay to have military out of uniform? And that's an important aspect too. Military out of uniform that are mixing with the police forces and the general population. Isn't there a law against that somewhere? I mean, seriously.
Well, there was. Remember with Bush, when Hurricane Katrina happened, he put the military into New Orleans, and apparently he wrote an executive order or something happened with all of that. I remember I read something about that the other day, and that's where it really got started. And then they decided they could go ahead and do that, and Posse Comitatus was no longer going to be a law in the United States. And apparently they've decided to go full tilt and give us the full Monty, I guess, on all of this, and make us realize that this is what they're going to do. They're just going to go ahead and just have at us and do whatever they want to do to us now. There's nothing we can do because we didn't stand up in complete rebellion against what happened with Katrina. I mean, we should have been in arms with Katrina. We should have been marching on the White House, with picket signs and saying, hey, this is nuts. You can't do this. You can't go in and disarm these people with military personnel who are trying to defend their homes in New Orleans, who are left with the looters. You can't be doing stuff like that.
Well, look at the progression. Yeah, and look at the progression from Katrina to when was that, 2005 or whatever? From Katrina to Boston, the Boston bombing, the acceptance with Katrina, with the military, and then the paramilitary in Boston, as getting the last alleged bomber, arresting them, and everyone clapping, and it's okay now. I mean, it's okay. And my prediction, Ted, is this: here in the short term, I do believe you're going to see a drone on American soil fire on an alleged terrorist to officially kick off Battlefield America. I can see that coming. I can see, hey, we used an armed drone against somebody in the back roads of New Mexico to take him out because he was carrying some sort of explosive or something. He was involved in something that was going to be a imminent danger to the public, and that's going to soften up. I mean, people are going to applaud. Even conservatives are going to say, "Hey, that's great." Boy, they're doing the thing.
If it was an alleged, ISIS terrorist who smuggled something or came across through the southern border with an intent to do bad. Yeah.
Right. But we're cultivating we're making the ground fertile for. If we really gave a hoot about the security of our country, we'd be slamming the border shut. We'd be tossing out the illegal immigrants. Yet we're giving them benefits. We're allowing them to get tax breaks. It just doesn't. See, none of this makes sense. And people ascribe a lot of this to incompetence. I disagree. I think it's part of a larger agenda.
I agree with you 100%, Doug. I think that something's going on. They're using all these other stories as cover stories for obfuscation, while other things like huge underground cities and tunnels are being built for some unknown agenda, and they're planning on, doing something absolutely horrible to us to create some type of horrible problem, either an EMP or something. The sad part about it is the globalists are just, excuse the phrase, hell-bent on killing everybody. And that's what they seem that they want to do. They don't seem to care about anybody else or anything else. And sadly, if we as Christians don't stand in the aggregate for what's going on, then they're going to end up, coming in and taking away our rights and hauling us all off to concentration camps. I mean, being a Christian is going to be pretty dangerous here pretty quick in the United States. They're already coming after the conservatives already. We already know that. Anybody who supported Ron Paul, so many of them got audited. And so the crazy thing is, we think that's all okay. And you're absolutely right. So many of the Christians have come in and said, okay, that's great, and we applaud them when they arrest the Boston bomber. I mean, are we kidding ourselves? Are we kidding them? I mean, what are we trying to prove? I mean, why do we think that any part of that's okay? It's like that lady that I talked about in Houston a few months ago, or maybe in Dallas, I can't remember, or maybe in Austin, but it was in Texas, who was held down, had a bag over her head, and they choked her out unconscious trying to take blood out of her for a DUI checkpoint. What part of that's okay with anybody listening? None of that's okay with me. I mean, the law was already in place that if she refused to give blood, she was going to lose her license for a year anyhow. Just take her license away for a year. That's okay. Give her an administrative revocation of her license. But don't hold her down and choke her out and bruise her up and beat on her and torment her and torture her with a bag over her head, thinking that's going to calm her down. I mean, what a bunch of whack bags. I mean, where do these people come up with ideas like that? That's what I want to know. I mean, and why does anybody think in that precinct, especially the police chief or the sheriff, that kind of behavior is okay? I mean, why weren't these guys completely disciplined and fired for what they've done? I mean, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
It is, and we're getting inundated with this behavior. It is not okay, and of course, dual purpose for this too. But by the way, it's interesting if people know history. Back in the Wild West or the olden days. We didn't have a police force. There was a constable or a marshal that was responsible for serving legal papers, but we didn't have a police force. And in fact, we had very few jails back then. People need to really understand history and how we've come up through, and to see where we're headed. And where we're headed, Ted, is headlong into a bridge abutment. But all of this, everything that we're talking about tonight, man, there's just so much going on. What do you think about the Iranian situation? I want to get your take on that with Iran, with the caliphate that's spreading across. Attempted to be set up. I mean, what's going on over there? And how?
What's interesting about that whole thing in the Middle East? I mean, with Turkey, with Iran, with the cradle of civilization, with all these old monuments and old temples and all the things they have, the entire museum that was in Baghdad of all the old antiquities and all the things that are there. There's a lot more to that place than just oil, and there's a lot more going on over there than just oil. Because the reality is, I mean, the Sabbatain Frankists who control the world, I guess they want to control the Federal Reserve systems in those countries. They're putting their banks over there. I got that. But you're dealing with people that want to get rid of the dollar as the petrodollar. They want to start trading for gold. You're dealing with a lot of different stuff. So every time I always look first, number one, I look at the obvious, which is the banking community, the international bankers that have hijacked the world. That's number one. Now we've got our ships basically shadowing the ships supposedly bringing arms in the Yemen and all that. I mean, that's a hotbed over there. But again, I don't believe that we're going to go into a nuclear conflict. I just don't believe that. I believe that, like Colonel Corso said back in 1947, when he wrote that book the day after Roswell, I believe that we have an extraterrestrial presence on this planet. I know this sounds kind of crazy to a lot of your listeners. I believe that. I used to not believe that until I read a bunch of these books. And now there's so much evidence to support that. I really believe something else is going on that we're unaware of. I really believe that we have this demonic presence, or whatever you want to call it, that's revealed itself and exposed itself. And I don't believe that they want us to start detonating nuclear bombs because of what it does to the fabric of time, space, and all 13 dimensions. I don't think they're going to allow that to happen again. I think that may have happened once before in the past of the Earth, of the pre-Adamic race. I don't know. We were talking about that with the different glass that was being found, in Saudi Arabia, the green glass. But the point is this. I don't think that we're going to go to nuclear war. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think that Russia's central bank is controlled by the Kabbalists, the same as our central bank, the same as China, through the Bank of International Settlements. So we've got one hand directing all of this stuff. And remember, they always give us a boogeyman. They always give us a hero. They always want to make sure they can obfuscate the truth to keep us, unaware of what's going on. But I believe the whole agenda here is to bring in a kingdom of Lucifer. And if they've got to take the Iranians out to do that, I think that's what the whole point is.
Well, and Valerie Jarrett being so close to Obama, working, and when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, there were a lot of secret meetings, and I'm trying to think of the Middle Eastern countries, but there was a lot going on behind the scenes, even back in 2008, 9, 10, and so on. Pre-Arab Spring. So, wow, yeah. I got to ask you this too. I mentioned this earlier in the program. Obama looks pretty unhealthy now. People will say, "Well, it's stress and all this." Come on. He's
number one. We know he has an alternative lifestyle. We know that. I mean, Joan Rivers pointed that out. Was dead the month. We know that's going on. I know that. I talked to Charles Butler, I'll be on his show in the morning at 8:30. He's on GCN also, and he talked about it. He knows Obama. He said he's bisexual. He said it right on the air. And so we know he's got this agenda going on, which is usually not a very healthy lifestyle. In addition to that, we know that he's probably not eating right, and he's pretty much a chain smoker. And he's got to be pretty stressed out. I mean, the thing about it is that, when you're going through all of this stuff like he's going through, and you finally realize that you're not the one in charge, you got to do what they're telling you to do because of what they've done to you already in the past, you start to realize pretty quickly that, this is a bad situation for him to be in. And I believe that's why so many of the presidents age so badly. And the ones that don't age, they try to shoot or kill like they did Reagan. They try to get him out. Of course, we know that George Bush ran the White House for pretty much 12 years after Reagan got shot. We got that figured out. I mean, the head of the CIA got to run the White House. And in addition to that, we know that they took Kennedy out because he passed Executive Order 11110. In addition to that, he wanted to get rid of the CIA and he wanted to get rid of the mob. I mean, he basically did everything he wanted. He was going to do everything he wanted to do, and then Bobby was going to pick up the torch from when Kennedy had gotten killed. So then they killed Bobby. And I mean, so again, if you read that, if you watch that video, it's 3.5 hours long. It's a phenomenal video from JFK to 9/11. It's a rich man's trick. It's free on the internet. It's YouTube. And it'll go into detail on all of that different stuff and what happened with the Kennedys, what happened with the Bushes. They talk about the Bush crime cabal. They talk about Prescott Bush and how he was a collaborator with the Nazis. I mean, all of this stuff. I mean, the thing about it is that nobody wants to talk about this stuff. Your audience knows what's going on because they're awake. They've got great guests on your show all the time, like Steve Quayle and Paul McGuire and and Dizdar and all these other guys. So they're always talking about all of this stuff. But the reality is, I mean, if we don't tell the people the truth of what's going on, shame on us. We've got to be the ones out there. We have to be on the wall making the clarion call for the masses to awaken. And then may God have mercy on us for being on the wall, and may He have mercy on the innocents who aren't on the wall with us but are listening, trying to do things, or those who are completely unaware of what's going on that are about to be overtaken by this new world order. I mean, the innocents are the ones that I feel sorry for. I mean, we're the ones that are trying to warn them all, and the problem is we're trying to get so many people to wake up at the same time that we're getting that tipping point. We're allowing that to happen, like Dave Hodges calls it. He calls it a tipping point. He says once 10% of the population wakes up, they've got to do another false flag. They have to do something big, like 9/11, like Ruby Ridge, like Oklahoma City, Ruby Ridge and Waco and all those things. They pretty much started making everybody wake up as the deteriorating that was taking over to the country, and all of a sudden we have Oklahoma City false flag. Then we have 9/11 false flag. And I'm not saying that our federal government did this false flag with 9/11 or with Oklahoma City. I'm saying that rogue elements of the government probably were involved in it. I'm saying that. I'm not saying that we, the people in the Congress and the Senate, did this, because I don't believe they did.
No, and that we have to make that distinction, because it's very simple, very easy for us to overstate our case. In other words, to make claims that are not factually accurate when we don't need to. In other words, we have to recognize that there is a criminal cabal within our government, within the MI6, within the MI5, within the Mossad, all the Western intelligence agencies, and this is the core group. And failure, and I think painting the federal government with a broad brush. Okay, I mean there's plenty of incompetence, plenty. I mean, but we have to identify who the enemies, the enemies are, and what their agenda is. And I think failure to do so will, it's and you know what else too. And I know we only have a few minutes left here of the show. I can't believe it's gone so fast, but No, I lost where I was going with that thought, except to say that, you mentioned being watchmen, and what you're hearing tonight, what you've heard tonight, what you're hearing tonight, it's some of this, or most of this you might have already known. But until we get well versed, and I think that's the important part, Ted, we have to be able to hold our own in an intellectual discussion with people who are opposed or reluctant to understand what's really going on. And how do we do that? We do it through muscle memory retention, using our brain cells. In other words, being able to be fluent, talk fluent, debate intellectually, and to help by going over this information over and over again, or hearing new information, or hashing it out like we are. That's going to help us bring others along to the party, shall we say. And I think that's so important to do.
Well, no, you're exactly right, because if we don't do that in the aggregate, if we don't do that as a Christian organization, and the thing about it is, it doesn't even matter if you're Christian at this point. I mean, we all need to be Americans. And I know that's going to sound odd to everybody, but I really believe that. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'd rather have a patriot at my side who's not a Christian than a Christian who wants to say, well, Romans 13 says that we got to obey the law of the land. I mean, I'd rather have somebody who says, well, no, I don't think I really want to go down the road of tyranny. I think I want to try something else. That's how I look at all of this stuff. And if we don't do that, it's just, we've got to have all of us sticking together in the aggregate. We really, really do. And if we don't, we're going to be in a situation, we're going to find ourselves, living where we don't want to live, doing what we don't want to do, and having this nightmare of a time. I mean, it's going to be awful. It's going to be awful, awful, awful. And let me read you this real quick. I wrote this letter to Alexander Bruce this morning. And she has a website called Forbidden Knowledge TV. She's got some phenomenal stuff on there, by the way. And we were talking about her website, what's going on, and how Google has completely attacked her because she was telling the truth. And I wrote this little excerpt to her. I said, we were talking about what's going on globally, and I said the closure of the Walmarts is probably being done for a military supply hub and processing of the dissident center if it goes hot. And I said, Alexander, you and I both have been trying for years to figure this mess out. It must be our men's relation, LOL. Something is horribly wrong, whether it's a financial collapse, a new world order, Luciferians, aliens, fallen angels, the book of Revelation being opened, Planet X, who knows, something bad this way cometh. This will be a planetary event. May God have mercy on those of us on the wall who have sounded a clarion call for the masses to awake. And may the Most High have mercy on the innocents. I appreciate your friendship. I'll let you know how the Hagmann Show goes. I think martial law would be in place before whatever's going to happen happens. There's a reason the Catholic Church has the telescope they named Lucifer. There's something going on, Doug. There's something going on, Joe, and we need to realize that we are the ones on the wall. We are the ones that are sounding the call. We are the watchmen, like your bumper sticker says it's on the back of my car. We are the watchmen that are standing out there doing this and trying our best to wake up the masses, not because we have all the answers, but that we know something's coming. The alarms are going off. something's coming. Steve Quayle has told us something is coming. Paul McGuire's told you. I have. You have. Dizdar has. And if we say that we weren't aware of something was wrong, when this thing hits, we're fooling ourselves and we're fooling the people that have listened to us.
Amen, brother. And with that watchman job comes a responsibility, and that responsibility is pretty heavy because the Bible does say that if you fail to warn in your capacity as a watchman, you will be punished. I mean, the blood is on your hands, and
that's right.
We take that responsibility extremely seriously, and that's something that I hope everyone understands. We do our best to make sense out of what's going on. And I'll tell you something, Ted. We don't have all the answers. We don't. A lot of this we're feeling around in the dark. But one thing about it, you might be feeling an elephant and thinking it's something else, a tree trunk. An elephant's, and a leg and think it's a tree trunk. But it's easy when you're feeling in the dark and you feel a water glass or something easily recognizable. I mean, obviously, we can identify that. So we can identify the knowns. We can identify those things that we can discern. And I think that the rest will have to use reasonable analyses to put together, connect the dots. And I think that right now, yeah, you're right. And it's just it's tough out there, and economic collapse as well, buddy.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run over to the Walmart in Brandon tomorrow. It's about 35 miles from here. I'm going to drive over there. I'm going to snoop around the parking lot. Okay.
Okay.
I'm taking you think I'm joking, but I'm not. Well, of course, I'm not joking because I'll do it. And
yeah,
I'm going to snoop around the parking lot. I'm going to take video of the thing. If I see anything weird happening over there, I'm going to send it to you, and you can post it on your website, because I'm actually, 35 miles away from one of the major Walmart closings. I'm going to drive around the parking lot, see if there's anything going on over there as far as plumbing repair, and see what's happening, because I know there's no underground tunnel system unless they went underneath the Florida aquifer. I have no idea how they would even do that. So it's one of those deals. I mean, I don't know what's going on over there, but tomorrow I'm going to go take a look and see. And there may not be going anything on. They may have the windows blacked out and whatever. I'm going to go knock on the door and say, hey, you guys open? See what's going on. But I want to know what's happening. I want to know what they're doing over there. I want to know what's happening, and I want to take some videotape of it and see what's going on, because, shoot, I might as well. It's only a 30-minute drive for me. And what's funny is it's like a couple blocks away from Pastor Rodney's church. I joked with him the other day, and I said, I told you they were coming for you. And, because he's been preaching this truth on national TV for the last 10 years of what's going on with the government and everything else, and he hasn't tried to pull any punches. He's told people the truth, because he's also a watchman, and he's telling the truth. That's why he's having that convention up there in Washington, D.C. I think it's July the 4th it's going to start, and I'm going to be there, and because I'm going to be in the trenches. I'm going to be in there talking to the congressmen, because I've never done that before, Doug. I've never actually gone and spoken to my representatives in Washington, D.C. I haven't done that. I want to do that. I want to get there and see what's going on up there, why they're doing what they're doing, why they think these things with Jade Helm is okay, what's going on, and what they're doing to try to stop some of this. We need to ask them some of those very directed questions, because if we don't do that, then shame on us, because they're supposed to be our elected officials, and they work for us.
In their backyard or in their front yard, we're going to ask them. Ted, we're out of time, my friend. We are out of time. I just want to say God bless. Thanks for everything, folks. Until tomorrow, stay safe and God bless. Thanks, Ted.
Nathan Leal will be our guest.
Yeah, guys.
All right.
Thank you, Ted. Have a great night.